Chapter 691. After a while, Ewing got together with a few of her waitresses who were on good terms with her. Hearing Ewing say that she wanted to know more about Yang Yi, the girls started talking at once.
Yang Yi?
I know him. He's a couple with that Murphy. I know that too. He sang a lot of songs. No, he wrote a lot of songs. He even sang some of them himself. What song did he sing?
Oh.
Yes, Life in Full Bloom. This song has been very popular recently. Did he write novels?
I don't know.
I don't pay much attention to books. I think he did. I remember somewhere saying that he started off as a novel writer. No, I'm just a songwriter. Ewing was confused by them. She had to change the question, what do you think of him? Does he keep his word? Such a big star should keep his word, right? I think it's hard to say. You can't judge a book by its cover. Sister Ing, what are you talking about? Do you still know Yang Yi? The waitress who asked this question had a gossipy look on her face. She was probably guessing if Ewing had a relationship with Yang Yi, or if Yu Ying's ex-husband was Yang Yi. Don't underestimate a girl's ability to gossip. Their imagination was too rich. Seeing the girl's eyes burning with the fire of gossip, Ewing guessed their thoughts. She smiled and waved her hand, explaining, "How could that be? How would I know Yang Yi? Didn't I buy a storybook for my daughter yesterday? The boss recommended it." The girls nodded their heads. That book was written by Yang Yi. There was a piece of paper in it. Ewing said, telling them about the small advertisement she saw and her doubts. So it's like that. But I don't know if it's true or not. But no one had heard of this fund. I think it's possible. Sister Ing, let me help you check on the internet. Now, anything can be found on the internet. A girl took out her phone and excitedly opened the web. She searched the name of the fund that Ewing mentioned and Yang Yi's name. A lot of related information and reports popped up. Hey, the Limit Challenge. The Life in Full Bloom that I told you about is the theme song of this show. A girl beside him said happily. Perhaps the Ultimate Challenge had bought advertising space under the keyword Yang Yi. The first few search results were all very selective. Pull it down and take a look. Ewing actually knew how to use a cell phone. She was not so outdated, so she went over to take a look and also directed. She found a link that read, Yang Yi appeared at the Children's Book Author Support Fund, claiming that every parent is the best storyteller. Open this and let me see, Ewing said. The link pointed to a video of the fund's press conference. There was only one video, and it was taken by the reporter himself. But in this video, Ewing saw Yang Yi's appearance for the first time, a man so tall that he did not look like a writer. The reporter who took the video asked Yang Yi, wanting to know his original intention for starting the fund. I'm not a professional children's book author, you know. Yang Yi, who was on the stage, said seriously, although the storybooks I wrote are quite popular, they're still very popular. The reporters below the stage laughed for a while. Some entertainment reporters who came to Yang Yi shouted, "You're a singer and songwriter." However, the reporters in the literature section were not happy. One of them could not help but stand up and argue, Yang Yi is famous for writing novels. Soldier's Assault, Drawing Sword, Prison Break, as well as suspense and mystery novels like Relieving Grocery Store and Night Walk. Who can match his achievements? Thank you for your praise. Yang Yi stopped their quarrel and smiled. The original intention of writing She's bedtime stories and several other children's books is also for my daughter, She. I tell her stories, and she likes to listen to them. She also likes to take these stories to the kindergarten to communicate with her classmates. I seem to think that the stories I told were not bad, so I decided to write them down and let the publisher sell them for me to see the reactions of other children. I didn't expect to receive many letters from children saying that they liked the stories I told. Really, thank you very much for your favor. You have the purest taste in the world. I'm honored to be liked by you. Yang Yi said seriously. There was applause from the audience. At that moment, Ewing, who was watching the video, was also attracted by Yang Yi's narrative. She remembered that when she used to tell stories to Yu Xiaowei, her daughter also listened attentively. Last year, a friend from Sweden, who is also Shi's father, told me that in Sweden, many children start reading from an early age. No matter how busy the parents are, they will take time out to read with their children before going to bed. Yang Yi talked about the change in his thinking and the scene when he went to the bookstore with Shi to look for books. It is because I found that there is no way to find suitable books for Shi to read, and I don't want my second child to encounter the same situation. So, I hope to be able to use this fund to find more children's book writers. I want them to create more stories suitable for children to read so that more children can read happily in the process of growing up and enjoy reading with their parents. Yang Yi's words made Yuing fall into deep thought. Yang Yi was not finished yet. In Sweden, children of every age have books that they can read. However, in the domestic market, all children's books are about the same. There are more words than pictures. Children who can read at the age of 7 or 8 may be able to read them, but children who can't read at the age of 4 or 5 may not be interested. Children of younger ages prefer colorful pictures, and simple words can be gradually aroused with the help of their parents to identify these words. What our country lacks in the field of children's books is not only picture books, but also interesting stories. The plots of the stories that we already have are very adult, and they lack fantasy elements that can stimulate children's imagination. Yang Yi said, "This is also why the main target of my fund is young parents, not professional children's book writers. Because every parent is the best storyteller, because you know what your child needs. You also know what kind of language to describe and describe it in so that children will like it more. Of course, I don't exclude professional authors. As long as they can also conceive and create from a child's point of view, we will also support them." Later, Yang Yi also answered a few questions, including some details of the support. We are now supporting content creators. It doesn't matter if you don't know how to make picture books. In Sahara Publishing, we have already recruited many artists to prepare the stories you create and sketch the pictures you imagine in your heart. I can promise you that the adaptation of these picture books will be carried out according to the normal process. Sahara Publishing will not be greedy for any copyright income that the original author deserves, Yang Yi said. What we are doing is just a platform for everyone to display their talents. From the interview video, Yuing also learned that in addition to the support fund, Sahara Publishing would also regularly hold some free training classes to teach the parents who sign the contract to write and help them improve their creative ability. It seemed that everything was beautiful. Yuing was a little moved. But was it really like what the video said? Yuing was still worried that this tall man might just be a liar who said beautiful words. Chapter 692. P.S. There is a loophole in this chapter. When driving the RV, other passengers must sit properly and fasten their seatbelts. Xiaohan was careless. Please ignore it and pay attention to traffic safety. QAQ, Gusu and Zhongqing were next to each other, and it only took 2 to 3 hours to drive there. Therefore, Yang Yi didn't need to ask for leave from Shi in advance. He rushed there early on Friday. Yang Huan went there first with the program crew. She was still a newcomer in the entertainment industry, so she couldn't put on airs in front of the seniors. Even though the 6 of them had become good friends after 2 episodes of the program. It was almost 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Yang Yi drove the RV and appeared near the Springfield kindergarten. When school was over, he got out of the car to pick up Shi. Yang Shi's father is here. Mr. Mu greeted and asked Yang Yi to come to the class. From this year onwards, the Springfield kindergarten upgraded the protection of the children. In the past, the parents were crowded in the yard, waiting for the children to come down from upstairs. Now, the parents had to be led in one by the head teacher to pick up their children. There were also 2 teachers in the classroom to calm the restless children. Although it was a little cumbersome, it had to be said that it was safer and more orderly. It prevented some bad guys from sneaking in and taking the children away in the chaos. Papa. Shi found that her father was the first to come in today. She was so happy that she immediately jumped up from her seat and threw herself into her father's arms. Yang Yi smiled and picked up the little girl. He kissed her cold little face and said, "Are you ready?" We're going on a trip.
Hee hee. Hee hee.
The little girl was so happy that she could only laugh. At this moment, Shishi's friends couldn't hold back anymore. Chen Shiyun stood up and said, Uncle Yang Yi, Shishi said that you're going to drive a big car for a trip, right? Yang Luoqi also stood up, pulled Yang Yi's clothes, and whispered, Shishi said that it's as big as a house. Nan Zhaoyu and Lu Weisha looked at Yang Yi, their eyes filled with curiosity. Lan Xian was also curious, but she probably just wanted to join in the fun. Her family also had a large RV, which was much more luxurious than Yang Yi's. Looking at these curious eyes, Yang Yi pondered for a moment and said with a smile, Do you want to come and take a look? After a while, Yang Yi took the little guys and their parents to the RV for a tour. Murphy, who was taking care of the kids in the RV, was caught off guard when she saw such a grand scene. So beautiful! Nan Zhaoyu exclaimed. It's not just beautiful, it's super beautiful. She proudly showed her friends around. In addition to visiting the bedroom with a double bed, she also took her father's hand and asked him to show everyone how to press a button to make the two sofas in the dining room automatically put together into a bed. This miraculous scene caused the little fellows to cry out in surprise. Fortunately, if it weren't for the parents, who smiled bitterly like Murphy, who persuaded the little guys to leave, they might have wanted to stay and travel with Shishi. After sending off the little guests who came to visit, Yang Yi could finally drive the RV and set off with his family. Are we going to eat first, or should we drive first and eat after we reach Gusu City? Yang Yi asked. Drive first, drive first. Shishi was very excited sitting in the RV. She didn't have to stay in the child safety seat and could run freely. This RV was really fun. Murphy also laughed and said, I'm not hungry yet. Let's go to Gusu City and see if there are any good restaurants there. Since we're going on a trip, we have to experience something different.
Okay.
Honorable madams and ladies, as you wish. Yang Yi shouted humorously and drove in the direction of the highway. Yang Yi was concentrating on driving. After all, this was a huge vehicle that was almost as big as a truck. Murphy didn't dare to disturb Yang Yi. She took Shi and Tong Tong to play on the big bed in the bedroom. The RV's performance was very good. Even when it was moving, the bumps were not obvious. Therefore, Murphy was at ease and put Tong Tong in a prone position on the bed. The little guy liked it too. This was because he could learn to prop up his body and turn his little head to have a better view. Moreover, there was an older sister who liked to imitate him, lying on her stomach and looking at him.
Hee hee.
Little brother, look at big sister. She used her elbows to move closer to Tong Tong. Under Tong Tong's curious gaze, she leaned over and bumped her head against Tong Tong. She didn't use much force and just pressed their foreheads together. Then, the two pairs of big eyes looked at each other. Perhaps little rascal thought this was very funny. He chuckled, his eyes turning into crescents, and two dimples appeared at the corners of his mouth. Hee hee, little brother is so funny. She saw that she had made her little brother laugh, so she also laughed happily. She even excitedly kissed Tong Tong's forehead. Tong Tong didn't have enough strength. After a while, he had to lie down and rest for a while. However, the little guy was still a little unsatisfied. He stretched out his little hand and reached for his sister.
Yeah.
The little guy let out a childish cry. It's big sister. She giggled. Yang Yi and Murphy often taught Tong Tong to say, Daddy, and Mommy. Of course, there were still a few months before Tong Tong could say, Daddy, and Mommy. However, as parents, even if they knew that it was impossible for their child to learn how to say, Daddy, and Mommy, who wouldn't be tired of repeating it over and over again. She also followed her parents and taught Tong Tong to say, Big sister. After a while, Tong Tong propped himself up again. Perhaps he had inherited the excellent genes of the Yang family. The little guy was very strong and energetic. However, his sister didn't want to play bullfight with him this time. Little brother, look at big sister. She excitedly climbed to the end of the bed. Tong Tong was very interested in his sister, so his eyes followed her. She, what are you doing? Murphy asked when she saw her daughter's actions. She was looking after the two children. I'm going to do a somersault for little brother. Cece had already bent her head. Her long hair was like a bottle of ink that had been knocked over, creating a black satin-like, small lake on the bed. Then move a little to the right. Don't kick Tong Tong. Murphy saw this and hurriedly put her hands on Tong Tong's head to protect him. Fortunately, the bed was very big. She somersaulted under her little brother's gaze. Her hair was messy as she climbed up. The little girl couldn't wait to look at her little brother. Tong Tong just watched curiously and didn't react. Murphy hugged the little guy in her arms so that he could watch from a comfortable position. She even imitated the tone of a child and said, "Big sister, can you perform one more time? I haven't seen it yet." She looked at her mom and laughed happily. "Mom, I'm not little brother anymore." Of course, she still enthusiastically continued to roll and perform for her little brother. Tong Tong didn't know why, but he also smiled and waved his little hands. He seemed to want to play with his big sister. Unfortunately, he was still too young. Amidst the laughter, the limousine drove into the beautiful Gusu City. In this world, Gusu City also had many beautiful gardens. However, it was already night time. Yang Yi didn't have time to look at the beautiful historical city after nightfall. He had to take his family out for dinner and settle down at the hotel. She was already complaining that she was hungry. Chapter 693. Early in the morning in Gusu City, the bright sunlight shone through the green leaves in the courtyard, sprinkling light spots the size of coins. There was a clear canal under the small arched bridge that flowed slowly. If it wasn't for the noise from the crowd that destroyed the tranquility of this place, it would have been a beautiful picture. "Do you have more walkie-talkies as backup?" Yang Yi walked to the camp of the program crew, pointed at the walkie-talkies that Ran Lien and the others were holding, and asked, "If you do, give me 2. Yang Yi was comforting Shi, who wanted to play with her father. Today's program recording didn't start at 4 in the morning, so when the little girl woke up, she stuck to her father, which was a bit difficult to deal with. As a matter of fact, Yang Yi saw that she was very interested in the walkie-talkies of the program crew, so he ran over to ask for one. There were still a lot of walkie-talkies, so Ran Lien asked the staff to give 2 to Yang Yi and even taught Yang Yi how to use them. "I know how to use them. Just tell me which channel is free. Don't let she sneak in and delay your work." Yang Yi laughed. "It's okay. The channel we use is encrypted. If you use this walkie-talkie, you won't be able to enter without entering the password," Ran Lien said. Thus, Yang Yi took the 2 walkie-talkies back, adjusted them, and handed one to Shi and the other to Murphy. Hey. Murphy followed Yang Yi's instructions and pressed the intercom button to talk to Shi. Shi, can you hear me?" She was curiously looking at the walkie-talkie. When she heard her mother's voice coming from the walkie-talkie, the little girl suddenly cried out in surprise. "Press here, you can also talk to your mother," Yang Yi instructed. The little girl studied it with great interest. She played with her mother, and her dependence on her father was greatly reduced. After giving some instructions to his absent-minded daughter, Yang Yi could finally go and record the show. Of course, he was worried that Murphy wouldn't be able to take care of her, so he also instructed the people left behind by the production team to help take care of Shi. Then, he turned around and left. "Everyone, welcome to the beautiful Gusu City. Today, we have 2 guests who will challenge the limits with you." After the recording of the first and second episodes, the program team realized that it was meaningless to let Shanghai TV station's famous host, Dong Wei, participate in the introduction of the rules of the game. Moreover, it was easy to steal the limelight. It was better to let Yen Tao, who was not famous and did not have a strong presence, say some necessary lines behind the camera. This was an adjustment that the production team had made to Yang Yi's original plan after their own research. They wanted to see the effects of this episode's recording. "Really?" Yuan Yen and the other 6 members cried out in surprise. Among them, Jie Yuchen was the most enthusiastic. He said with a smile, after 2 episodes, we finally have a new guest. Quick, tell us, is it a beauty? I'm tired of playing with these men all day long. In fact, they knew who the guests were. They had all met them yesterday, and Yang Yi had even gone to have supper with them. However, these guys' acting skills were top-notch, and they had completely fooled the audience. Look at you. Dan Hongkue laughed. How did Xiao Huan become a man? Isn't she a beauty too? Yeah, in the first episode, old Jie called her a beauty every day. Yuan Yen and Dan Hongkue both mocked Yang Huan. I think Brother Yu Chen is saying that Sister Huan is a tough woman, and she's not a woman. Guazi also laughed. Yang Huan made a gesture of wanting to hit someone, and Guazi quickly hid behind Jie Yu Chen. Although he still looked chubby, his body was much stronger. Perhaps it was because of Ding Xiang's training with him. Actually, I also see Yang Huan as a brother. Don't hit her. I'm praising you. I'm saying that you're as good as a man, and I respect you so much that I'm willing to treat you as a brother. Zhu Jie said, shaking his head. Although he was rambling, he was also mocking Yang Huan. However, Yang Huan didn't get it. She even smiled with satisfaction. Brother Jie is really good with words. Compared to the previous 2 episodes, the 3 juniors were much better. In the past, it was the 3 old foxes who spoke. Other than Zhu Jie, Yang Huan and Guazi didn't dare to speak. Now, the 2 of them had joined in, especially Guazi, who was a chatterbox. The 6 members' beautiful expectations were destined to be dashed, because when the 2 guests, Yang Yi and Geng Sha, appeared, they could only be disappointed. Why are they guys? And they're both guys. Yang Huan was also very disappointed. Only when Yang Yi stared at her did her expression change. She ran over with a smile to please him. Brother, why are you here? Of course, these were just some performances that they used to warm up the audience. As guests, Yang Yi and Geng Sha were very important. There was no need to mention Yang Yi. Geng Sha was the lead actor of the popular TV series Assault of the Soldiers. Now, everyone in the country knew this silly Su Sanduo. It could be said that he was even more popular than Yang Yi. After the bickering, it was time for the grouping. The director divided the 6 members and 2 guests into 2 groups. One group is the SWAT team, which is composed of Yuan Yen, Dan Hongkue, Yang Huan, and Geng Sha. The other group is the fugitive team, which is composed of Jie Yu Chen, Guazi, Zhu Jie, and Yang Yi. Yen Tao said, "Why?" Guazi saw that the situation was not good. With 2 old foxes on the opposite side, how could he play? He quickly stood out and shouted, "I played the role of a policeman in the movie. Geng Sha is the fugitive. Why is he in the SWAT team, and I'm in the fugitive team?" Zhu Jie and Jie Yu Chen looked at each other and surrounded the little fatty. They twisted their hands and rubbed their faces, laughing. Guazi, you want to be a traitor because you see that the other side is strong, right? Geng Sha was surprised to see these guys together. Yuan Yen smiled and said to him, "Geng Sha, you've never seen a show like this, right?" "Nope." Geng Sha shook his head honestly. "You'll get used to it." Dan Hongkue came over and said. He and Yuan Yen both laughed. Of course, they deliberately talked to Geng Sha to help him get more screen time. Although the show was designed by Yang Yi was the same as Geng Sha. They were both newcomers to variety shows. Geng Sha had at least appeared in variety shows because of Soldier's Assault, but Yang Yi was really a young lady who had been on a sedan chair, a first. Seeing Yang Yi standing there and watching others play, his newbie appearance was completely exposed. Of course, Yang Yi did not care too much about whether he could appear on screen more often. After the grouping was settled, Yen Tao read out the new rules. Now, please enter the 2 houses behind you and choose your respective team leader. Please note that the captain has the ability to save the eliminated teammates by completing the challenge game. Once the captain is eliminated, the team members will never be able to be revived. Whether it was real or fake, there was a burst of exclamation from both sides. This means that we have to eliminate the other team's captain first. Yuan Yen said, hitting the nail on the head. Our chances of winning are very high. How do we eliminate the opponent? Zhu Jie asked curiously. Yen Tao did not speak, but asked someone to take out 2 suitcases specially made for the extreme challenge and handed them to the SWAT team and the fugitive team. When they opened the suitcases, the members under the camera let out a burst of exclamation. It turned out that the suitcases were filled with pistols. It had to be said that the props were made with a lot of effort, as they looked just like the real thing. There were also separate magazines. Yang Yi saw the problem, but he could not help but go forward and weigh it. It was light, as expected. It was a fake gun with a plastic shell. Not only was it a fake gun, but it was also a special water gun. According to Yen Tao's introduction, the water gun needed a magazine, which was a container for water. However, the capacity was very small, and one magazine could only be fired twice. Because the SWAT team and the fugitive team had different identities, each member of the SWAT team had 2 magazines, while the fugitive team only had 1. This isn't fair. Guazi and Zhu Jie ran over and grabbed Yen Tao's hand, crying out in grievance. It's okay. It's okay. Jie Yuchen pulled Guazi and Zhu Jie back. He winked and said, "Are you stupid? If the water in the magazine is used up, you can reload it. What does Gusu City lack the most? Yeah. What Gusu City doesn't lack the least is water." Guazi patted his head and said with a smile. Yang Yi creased his eyebrows and said, "You can reload it? I don't think it's that simple." Just then, a stream of water shot over. Yang Yi did not try to dodge it, so the water splashed onto him. He looked over and saw Guazi holding a water gun. The first shot hit Yang Yi, and the second shot hit Guazi. "Ah!" Guazi screamed. "What are you doing?" Yuan Yen and Dan Hongkue from the SWAT team exclaimed. "I'm testing the gun. So that's how it is. It's quite fun," Yang Huan said with a smile. She even blew at the muzzle of the gun handsomely. Just like in the movies, it seemed like her water gun could even emit smoke. "Xiao Huan, you've wasted a magazine," Yuan Yen said, exasperated at her failure to meet his expectations. "Ah, really?" Yang Huan looked at Yen Tao in surprise. "The competition hasn't started yet, right?" "The competition hasn't started yet, but the recording has already started," Yen Tao said meaningfully. "Director, she didn't know. Can you forgive her this once?" Dan Hongkue begged. "Give her another magazine. Look at Guazi and Yang Yi. What's so special about them?" Yen Tao kept them in suspense. Everyone turned their heads to look, and they all exclaimed, "Oh, oh." It turned out that there was a purple mark on Yang Yi and Guazi's clothes. This is a magazine filled with a special dye. Only by hitting the opponent with this dye can the opponent be eliminated. Yen Tao paused and said, "Because the production is limited, there are only so many magazines. Don't waste them." Yang Huan was dumbfounded, and the SWAT team groaned. "I told you it wouldn't be that simple," Yang Yi said with a smile. "How could this show allow you to break the rules so easily? Luckily I didn't move, or I would have run out of bullets." Zhu Jie, who had wanted to try the gun, retracted his hand nervously and said, "You must have done it on purpose. It's just a little dye. How could the production be limited?" Yang Huan was still complaining, and wanted to beg Yen Tao to replenish her magazine. "Please go to your houses as soon as possible to choose your team leader and check your mission card. The team that has finished changing can go to the next mission location earlier." Yen Tao was not moved. Hearing Yen Tao's words, Jie Yuchen, Zhu Jie, and Guazi quickly said to Yang Yi, Quick, let's go and choose our team leader." "Xiao Huan, let's go." Yuan Yen and Dan Hongkue had no choice but to persuade Yang Huan and drag Geng Sha, who did not know how to cooperate, into their houses. Chapter 694. After 2 episodes of the challenge, the 6 members were able to figure out some of the routines of the program crew. Some rules were alive and could be broken at will, or they could find a shortcut to circumvent them. Some rules were dead, like time. therefore, it was a race against time. Jie Yuchen, Zhu Jie, Guazi, and Yang Yi were the first to enter the fugitive team's house. It was a small house called Kuzuju in this modern imitation of Gusu Garden. Who should we choose as the team leader? After some teasing, Jie Yuchen went straight to the point. He winked at Zhu Jie and pointed at himself narcissistically. I choose Yang Yi, Brother Yang. Guazi raised his hand and said, because this program is Brother Yang's idea. I think with Brother Yang's command, we can win.
Yeah.
Zhu Jie nodded. Don't. I really don't know the plot and gameplay of this episode. Yang Yi smiled and said, the first 2 episodes were designed by me. But after that, it was handed over to the scriptwriter. This time, they even kept me in the dark, so I didn't know anything at all. That was the truth. So it was you who designed it. You made me so miserable in the first 2 episodes. Jie Yuchen rushed up and grabbed Yang Yi's neck angrily. Of course, he didn't use any force. Yang Yi cooperated and made an expression of being strangled. His head tilted and his tongue stuck out. After that, they continued to discuss who to choose as the team leader. I think we should choose Brother Yang. If we are eliminated, we can only wait for the team leader to complete the mission to save us. Guazi said, Brother Yang is good at fighting. He should be the best among us. If we want to complete those challenge games, we have to rely on Brother Yang. In this team, Jie Yuchen was responsible for being funny and Zhu Jie was responsible for dragging them down. Neither of them could be counted on. Guazi, who had not become the genius brain of Little Fox, could only be everyone's analyst. Jie Yuchen originally wanted to fight for the position of team leader, but when he thought about how many challenges he had to complete in order to save people, he rolled his eyes and agreed with Guazi's decision with a smile. I don't have a problem either, but Brother Yang, who do you think will be the captain of the SWAT team? Zhu Jie asked in a timely manner. He was trying to give Yang Yi some screen time. At this moment, in the Wamiai restaurant next door, for members of the SWAT team were also discussing this issue. Dan Hongkue thought it was Jie Yuchen. I think it's Yang Yi. He's very powerful. They'll definitely choose him. Yang Huan said. During the recording of the show, it was better not to try to curry favor with others. Little Gung, what do you think? Yuan Yen also took care of Gung Sha. Now that Gung Sha had joined in, he said shyly, I also think it's Brother Yang. He's the most familiar with this show. It's basically confirmed that Yang Yi will be the captain. Yuan Yen concluded. He said, look, it's so easy to guess. Now that you've chosen me as the captain, they'll definitely guess it. My suggestion is that we change to another person and let Yang Huan be the captain. This is because they'll also think that old Dan and I are the most cunning in our team, so we're the most likely candidates to be the captain. They'll probably focus fire on us first. So, Yang Huan, if you're the captain, you can seize the opportunity to escape and complete the mission to save us. Why don't we let Gung Sha be the captain? Gung Sha and the others won't be able to guess it. Yang Huan said. That's fine too. Little Gung, can you do it? Yuan Yen asked. Gung Sha showed a great sense of responsibility. He straightened his legs and chest and said, I promise to complete the mission. Ha ha. Don't be like this, don't be like this. We're not filming Soldier's Assault. Dan Hongkue was amused by this honest kid. But I don't know how to do it. Gung Sha scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. It's okay, we'll teach you. Yang Huan said with concern. At this moment, the cell phones on the table suddenly rang. These were the props given to them by the program team. Ever since the broadcast of Shanghai TV station, not only had Extreme Selection received a lot of sponsorship money, but they had also been provided with props by these manufacturers. For example, the cars and cell phones that they would be using for the upcoming mission were all provided by car brand sponsors and cell phone brand sponsors. The cell phones were even the latest smartphones. Yuan Yen and the others skillfully turned on their cell phones and watched the mission instructions. It was a video of a man in black. The main thing was to tell them that a batch of priceless gold had been transported into the vault of the International Bank. However, a group of fugitives had their eyes on it. Yuan Yen and the others needed to get rid of all the fugitives before the fugitives stole the gold. Among the fugitives, there's an undercover agent from the police. Please find him before the fugitives notice, complete the secret signal, and bring him back safely. Yang Huan said, the secret signal is, give me a reason not to kill you. The other party's answer should be, I didn't have a choice in the past. Now, I just want to be a good person. Dan Hongkue immediately fell in love with this line. He repeated it over and over again. This line is quite interesting. Interesting. That's easy. When we're chasing after the fugitives, we can ask him this. Can't we? Yuan Yen laughed. If his answer is wrong, we'll shoot. Yang Huan said. Hey, since there's an undercover agent in the fugitives, do you think there's an undercover agent in our SWAT team as well? Dan Hongkue asked. Suddenly, the atmosphere became tense. They looked at each other as if they were examining something. Hey, don't look at me. How can I be a spy? This is my first time on the show. I don't know anything, Geng Sha scratched his head and said embarrassedly. Geng Sha can be ruled out. If he's a spy, he'll be exposed too easily, Yang Huan said. I think you're a spy. Dan Hongkue stared at Yang Huan and laughed. Just now, you wasted your bullets for no reason. Hey, brother Dan, I didn't waste my bullets for no reason. I was testing my gun. Who knew that this show would be so stingy and refuse to give me more bullets? Yang Huan said, feeling wronged. I can swear that if I'm a spy, I won't have a smooth year, Yuan Yen said as he raised his hand. Note 1. I can also swear that if I'm a spy, I won't have a smooth year. Dan Hongkue hesitated and raised his hand as well. Then, everyone looked at Yang Huan. If I'm a spy, I won't have a smooth year either, Geng Sha said quickly. If I'm a spy, I won't have a smooth year either. Yang Huan pouted and said. Yuan Yen had been observing everyone's expression, but he couldn't see anything wrong. He said, then it's possible that there's no spy in our SWAT team. Only the fugitives have our undercover agent. The mission card was handed over. It asked the members of the SWAT team to change their equipment and go to Gusu City's Cold Mountain Temple and Stone Lion Forest to chase after the fugitives or steal the key. There were 6 locations in total, but the SWAT team would only decrypt 2 new locations every half an hour. In comparison, the fugitives had 6 complete locations. As long as they were lucky enough, they might be able to get ahead of the SWAT team and not be caught. We'll be divided into 2 groups. I'll be with the captain, Geng Sha, and you'll be with Yang Huan. Although the captain was Geng Sha, the command was given to the resourceful Yuan Yen. The marvelous mathematician said clearly, we'll go to these 2 locations separately. If we see anyone from the fugitives, we'll chase after them. If not, we'll look for information. Just as they hurried to change their equipment, Dan Hongkue walked into the changing room that the program team had arranged for him. However, he saw the man in black sitting behind the table, waiting for him. Dan Hongkue was a smart person. How could he not know what was going to happen next? He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Hey, do you have to do this? You waited for me to make the oath before doing this? The more Dan Hongkue spoke, the more annoyed he became. He pretended to be angry and said, Did you do this on purpose? Did you choose me because I'm not the captain? However, the man in black showed him a video that had just been filmed. It turned out that when Yen Tao was explaining the rules, 2 signs had been placed in front of him. On them were the names of the 2 teams of spies. This had been confirmed in advance, but they had deliberately not informed the 2 spies in advance. Of course, the video that Dan Hongkue watched did not record the names of the undercover fugitives. Dan Hongkue only saw his own. Fine. Spies it is. What do I need to do? Dan Hongkue resigned himself to fate. The man in black handed him a mission card, and Dan Hongkue read it aloud. Find the spy in the fugitive team and kill him. Find an opportunity to contact the fugitive team and help the fugitive team achieve the final victory. Dan Honkue was also an old fox. He read the content that was not written on the mission card. The undercover fugitives on the opposite side should have a similar mission. In other words, I can't rashly expose my identity before I know who the undercover fugitives are. After a while, Dan Honkue finished changing. They were all wearing the special police uniform. However, their original bulletproof vests had been replaced with white vests. This way, the dyeing was even more obvious. "Why are you so slow?" Yuan Yen complained. He didn't know that his teammate, who had just made the oath, had changed his mind. Chapter 695. On Yang Yi's side, the director also played the same trick. Before changing clothes, the undercover didn't know that they were undercover, so Yang Yi couldn't see any flaws at all. This made him wonder if there were no spies on his side. The fugitive team didn't speculate for a long time like the SWAT team. Because Yang Yi was the captain and commander, they were quickly divided into two groups. After quickly changing, they drove away. Yang Yi and Zhu Jie were in one group, while Jie Yuchen and Guazi were in the other group. Under the guidance of the staff, they slipped out of the back door and went to their chosen destinations. "Brother Yang, I'm so happy. I can go on a mission with you, you know?" Zhu Jie consciously sat in the driver's seat and chatted with Yang Yi while driving. "Is that so? Tell me why." Yang Yi laughed. Since they were recording a program, he had to take Zhu Jie's words. It was like a crosstalk where one person teased and the other praised. "You're my idol. When I was in the same company with Sister Fei, I didn't feel it. Later, I gradually found out that the songs you write are so good. You can master any kind of music style. In my opinion, you're the number one in my heart." Zhu Jie praised Yang Yi for a long time. "Well, don't put me on such a high pedestal. There are many powerful seniors in the industry. You have to learn from them." Yang Yi patted Zhu Jie's shoulder and changed the topic. "We're going to Qianqiao ancient town now, right?" "Well, yes." Zhu Jie nodded. "Then you've driven past." Yang Yi had just searched the map. With his ability, he remembered every intersection clearly. It was just that he was negligent just now. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "We should have just turned right at the intersection. Now that you've driven past, we'll have to take a big detour." "Ah!" Zhu Jie was dumbfounded. They pulled over, and Yang Yi bent down to find the GPS on the car's control panel. He set a destination for Zhu Jie. With the GPS's guidance, Zhu Jie shouldn't go the wrong way. It had to be said that car navigation was a new thing that was only introduced last year. Even the map software on mobile phones did not have this function. If this was not a new car provided by the sponsor, they would not have a navigation system in their car. Yang Yi didn't know either. The executive director, who was sitting behind the car with the cameraman, reminded them. It just so happened that it could also be used for product placement. However, what Yang Yi didn't notice was that while he was fiddling with the camera, Zhu Jie, who was sitting up straight, was looking at the camera lens in front of him with a sad face. He put his hands together and begged for forgiveness. So, Zhu Jie was the undercover agent of the fugitive team. Just now, he had deliberately led Yang Yi on a detour. It had to be said that acting undercover in front of Yang Yi put a lot of pressure on Zhu Jie. He was afraid that he would be caught and beaten up. "Brother Yang, let me tell you, although our program was designed by you, some of the essence is still understood by people like us who have really played it." After Zhu Jie finished praying, he continued to chat with Yang Yi. "Actually, it doesn't matter whether we win or not. What's the most important thing?" "What's the most important thing?" Yang Yi was very curious and raised his head. "The most important thing is to appear on screen." Zhu Jie laughed. "Even if we lose the challenge, as long as we get more screen time, we will definitely be happier than those who win." "Is this a hint?" The cameraman behind them recorded Zhu Jie's sly expression. "But the problem is, if I am eliminated early, then I will go to jail. How will I get any screen time?" Yang Yi sat up, straightened up, and asked doubtfully. "That's right. Ju Jie didn't think of this. He was a little stunned and didn't know how to answer. Fortunately, he was still a little witty. He immediately smiled and said, "That's easy. Let's get some screen time for ourselves." Ju Jie took out his mobile phone and wanted to take a selfie with Yang Yi. The two big men gathered together to take a selfie. Ju Jie also put up a pouting and raised eyebrows, a girl's photo pose. Yang Yi couldn't pose so enchanting. He could only smile and put up two fingers, a classic photo pose. "Brother Yang, later I will send a micro-broadcast. Hey, I can finally take a selfie with my idol. I'm really happy." Ju Jie took a selfie and sent a micro-broadcast. All of a sudden, the two sponsors' advertisements were inserted. However, Yang Yi could hear a hint of nervousness in his happy voice. Especially when Yang Yi asked Ju Jie about it just now, this guy's expression had changed and revealed a flaw. After all, Ju Jie was not like those three old foxes. He didn't have perfect acting skills. Moreover, Yang Yi had a pair of fiery eyes. His little trick was seen through by Yang Yi. Why was Ju Jie nervous? And deliberately stalling for time? Yang Yi had already guessed the answer. They got back on the road. Since they drove at the wrong intersection, there was no need to take a big detour. They continued to drive forward and turned at the next intersection. Yang Yi took out his pistol from his back and fiddled with it in his hand. He took out the magazine in his pocket, put it in, and took it out. "Ju Jie, do you think my water gun can eliminate people if it hits them?" Yang Yi asked. Ju Jie didn't doubt him. He said honestly, "Yes, but there are only 2 bullets. Our opponent has more bullets than us. Brother Yang, you have to use it sparingly." Yang Yi hesitated whether to kill this damn spy first. However, it was a little inconvenient to drive now. "I'm good at this thing. Let me tell you, I guarantee that one shot will kill one person, and there will be no waste." Yang Yi laughed. "But, if you don't hit their captain can still revive the eliminated people." Ju Jie said, "In the end, we won't have enough bullets." "That's right." Yang Yi had an idea. He said, "Then give me your magazine." "Ah. It's a waste for you to take it. You can't hit accurately. It's best if you can be my shield. If you die, I can revive you. Then I have enough ammunition. If I hit accurately, I can eliminate more opponents." Yang Yi said, "Don't hesitate. Give it to me quickly." Ju Jie hesitantly handed the pistol to Yang Yi. The only thing he wanted to do now was not to arouse Yang Yi's suspicion. Yang Yi took out the magazine, stuffed it in his pocket, and returned the empty gun to Ju Jie. "You take the shell. If necessary, you can scare others. Brother, then I'll rely on you to protect me." Ju Jie said. "No problem. I'm your captain. If I don't protect you, who will protect you?" Yang Yi said with a smile. Since the ammunition has been collected, Yang Yi was not in a hurry to kill Ju Jie. He put away his gun and let Ju Jie continue to drive for him. It took more than 10 minutes to get to Qianqiao ancient town. Yang Yi took out his mobile phone and fiddled with it unconsciously. Although he was recording a program, he was a father after all. He couldn't leave everything and play wholeheartedly. Now that he was idle in the car, he thought of Murphy and Shi, who were with the production team. Was Murphy okay? She took care of Dewa and Erwa. It should be very hard for her, right? He didn't know if she would still make a fuss. Yang Yi was a little worried that the little girl would start to talk about her father again after the novelty of the walkie-talkie faded. There was also Tong Tong. It was the first time she went out since she was born. He didn't know if she could adapt. "Brother Yang, what are you thinking about?" Ju Jie didn't want the car to become quiet, so he started to ask again. "I'm thinking, can we call other people's numbers other than our team members?" Yang Yi said. "Yes. But we have to know the other party's phone number." The contact list inside was prepared by the production team in advance. "Only the few of us have the phone number. For example, Teacher Yuan's phone number isn't in there," Ju Jie said. "I'm talking about calling other people, such as the phone number you remember. Yang-e didn't beat around the bush and said, "Didn't Murphy and the child come to Gusu? I want to call them and see how they're doing."
Oh.
Ju Jie suddenly understood. He smiled and said, "Yes, Brother Yang. This is a normal phone and a normal SIM card." Chapter 696. The wireless walkie-talkie was indeed a new toy for Shi. The little girl was having a lot of fun playing with it. Yang-e had only been out for less than an hour, so she was still interested in it. She held the walkie-talkie and ran back to her RV with a string of pleasant laughter. Even the little assistant who was taking care of her couldn't keep up with her. Mom, can you hear me?" She pressed the walkie-talkie and said loudly, as if she was worried that if her voice was too low, the wireless transmission skill would not be enough. I hear you. Murphy responded with interest. "Where are you now?" She heard her mother's voice from so far away. She was pleasantly surprised and felt that the walkie-talkie was more and more fun. The little girl jumped onto the bed and lay on her stomach like Tong Tong. She crossed her feet in stockings and talked to her mother while shaking them. "I'm in the car." Mom, how can you still hear me?" She asked curiously. "Because we are using the walkie-talkie. If we are not far away, we can hear you." Murphy's voice came over. Then, "Can Papa hear me?" Cece suddenly had an idea. "He can't hear you because your Papa didn't bring the walkie-talkie. He is working." Cece pouted slightly. Although it wasn't to the point of being unhappy, she still felt a little regretful. She was happy with a little regret. Murphy was worried that she would be sad, so she said, "But your brother is here. Your brother can hear you. Do you want to talk to your brother?" She suddenly became interested. In order to talk to her brother, she rolled over and sat up. She held the walkie-talkie with her two small hands and couldn't wait to press the button. "Hello, brother, can you hear me? Sister is talking to you." The little girl's voice was full of joy and lightness. It was like a moving melody that echoed in the car. At this moment, Murphy placed her walkie-talkie in front of Tong Tong. Tong Tong was actually curious about this new and strange world. The little guy was looking around when something suddenly reached over. There was also a strange sound. The little guy was stunned and stared blankly at the walkie-talkie in his mother's hand. Murphy waited for a while, then picked up the walkie-talkie again and said to Shi, "Little brother may not have heard it. You have to talk to him more." Shi's voice continued to come out of the walkie-talkie. However, when Murphy put the walkie-talkie to Tong Tong again, the little girl was not happy. Perhaps it was because the black surface of the walkie-talkie did not fit Tong Tong's taste, but he waved his hand and hit it as if he wanted to push it away. "Little brother doesn't seem to like walkie-talkies." Murphy helplessly put away the walkie-talkie and said to Shi, Yeah. At this moment, Tong Tong seemed to be very happy. He opened his mouth and shouted twice in his mother's arms. "I heard it. I heard little brother talking." She shouted in surprise. However, she soon heard her mother's voice. "Wait a minute. Mommy has to answer a phone call. I don't know who is calling." After a while, Murphy smiled and said to Shi through the walkie-talkie, "Your father is calling. Come and talk to him quickly." Don't come over. I want to talk to Papa through the walkie-talkie." She was much more interested in the walkie-talkie than the phone. Murphy had to press the walkie-talkie and turn on the speaker so that Yang-e and she could talk through the walkie-talkie. In the car, Yang-e waited for his daughter's voice. "Hello, Papa. Can you hear me?" Although the little girl's voice was a little distorted because of the walkie-talkie and the phone, it was still sweet and lively. "I can hear you, Shi. Can you hear me?" Yang-e smiled and said, "Mommy said that you want to talk to me through the walkie-talkie from afar." "That's very good. I can hear you, The little girl smiled happily after being praised. "Daddy is recording a program, which means he is in the middle of a competition. Therefore, he might not be able to accompany you today. You have to listen to Mommy and play with Mommy, okay?" Yang Yi said.
Okay.
I'm very obedient. Shi's voice was soft and sweet. Although it was a little distorted, it was still very pleasant to hear.
Okay.
You can tell Daddy to do your best. Yang Yi smiled and said, Daddy doesn't have much time left. I have to go to the competition. Otherwise, I won't be able to win.
Go, Papa.
The little girl said cleverly. Of course, as her daddy's loyal little fan, she was free to express herself. Papa, you are the best. You will definitely win, right? Yes, Daddy will definitely win. Yang Yi gave his daughter a positive answer. Okay, that's it. Daddy loves you. I love you too. The little girl's voice was so sweet that it could kill people. Yang Yi smiled and put down the phone. Then, he said to Zhu Jie, who was next to him, meaningfully, I have no choice. For my daughter, I will definitely win this batch of gold. Yes, we will definitely win. Zhu Jie didn't know that Yang Yi had already seen through his identity. He even waved his fist excitedly with Yang Yi, shouting as if to encourage him. Finally, they arrived at the typical Jiangnan water town of Qianqiao Ancient Town. Wow, it's so beautiful. As soon as he got out of the car, Zhu Jie couldn't help but exclaim. He rushed to the nearest bridge and stood on the arch bridge and looked down. Thousand Bridges Ancient Town, as the name implied, was an ancient town with many bridges. It was traversed by a long and narrow river. Ancient people who were full of wisdom built houses and bridges around the river and lake. It also formed the interesting architectural pattern where one could see the river through the window and take a boat when going out. Of course, it didn't mean that they had to take a boat. These ancient bridges still connected various rivers that were not very wide. The small boat swayed through the river and constantly passed through the arches of the small bridges. It was a special kind of fun. Even Yang Yi felt that this Thousand Bridges ancient town was very beautiful. Not only the river, but the trees on both sides of the river were verdant and lush, making this small town even more tranquil. Looking at it, one would feel comfortable. Brother Yang, I think you can bring Sister Fei and Shi here to play tomorrow. Zhu Jie said excitedly. That's a good idea. Yang Yi smiled and said, I'm here to take the lead. They still had to find clues about the vault key. However, when Yang Yi and Zhu Jie were about to leave, Zhu Jie suddenly said, Brother Yang, are you thirsty? I'll buy you a bottle of water. Why do you want to buy water? Yang Yi asked. Just as Zhu Jie was nervous, Yang Yi smiled and said, There is water everywhere. Do you still want to buy water? It turned out to be a joke. Zhu Jie secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He scratched his head and said with a smile, How can this water be drunk? Yang Yi didn't stop him. He asked Zhu Jie to go to the small shop next to him to buy water. He looked around, then pulled the cameraman aside and began to talk to himself in front of the camera. I can now be sure that Zhu Jie is the spy among the four of us. This guy's acting is too bad. He deliberately said that he was going to buy water. It should be to inform the SWAT team. Yang Yi smiled. He gestured in the air with his hand and said, You should add subtitles here in the post-production, the calculation ability that makes the director tremble. Later, the post-production was really added, and Yen Tao and the others were very naughty. They kept the video of Yang Yi's narcissism. However, I'm now hesitating whether to eliminate him first. Yang Yi sighed and said as if he was deeply immersed in the role, After all, we are brothers who have done great things together, brothers who have been through life and death together, brothers who are willing to take bullets for each other. But, as a brother, how can he betray us? Yang Yi also began to integrate into the show. He was very excited for a while and indecisive for a while. I still want to give him a chance. I hope he can change his mind. On the other side, Zhu Jie was also in a dilemma. He used the excuse of buying water to inform the SWAT team. How can I? Big Brother Yang is fighting for this batch of gold for his daughter, fighting for the victory of the competition. If I betray him, I will feel very guilty. This guy said to himself. However, undercover, after all, is undercover. Zhu Jie repeated the classic line, then gritted his teeth and said, "Brother Yang, I'm sorry. I'm under cover. I have no choice." He looked at the camera and told the executive director the information he wanted to report to the SWAT team. Thousand Bridges, Ancient Town. Beep beep beep. Not long after, the SWAT team's cell phone rang. Chapter 697. There are no hints at all. Isn't this too difficult? Looking for information on a key in a town, we don't even know what the information looks like. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. Zhu Jie returned with water and the two of them prepared to look for clues. However, after asking the executive director, they did not get any hints. The two of them were dumbfounded and Zhu Jie could not help but complain. "Let's look for it as we walk." Yang Yi was also frowning, but he patted Zhu Jie's shoulder and comforted him. After walking for a while, Yang Yi and the rest were still confused. They did not know where to start. Moreover, it was troublesome to wander around the town. There were many bridges. After walking for a while, they had to cross the bridge again and again. Their progress was slow. If it was a normal trip, it would be fine. They could slowly walk around the town, empty themselves, and relax their body and mind. However, they were filming a show now. Many tourists saw the camera and surrounded them. When they saw Zhu Jie and Yang Yi filming the show, the tourists who recognized the two of them shouted excitedly. They even took out their phones to take photos with them. Luckily, the production team hired the town's security guards to help stop the tourists who wanted to squeeze in. They only allowed them to film from afar. However, they could not go on like this. Zhu Jie looked around and his eyes suddenly lit up. He said, "Brother Yang, why don't we take a boat?" "A boat? Sure." Yang Yi agreed with a smile. After negotiating with the boatman, they sat on the boat under the bridge. The boat was very small. When they stepped on it, it shook a little. Zhu Jie was a little scared. He sat upright on the stool and looked straight ahead. Yang Yi was very calm. However, when he saw Zhu Jie's expression, he could not help but laugh. "What are you afraid of? The grandfather who drives the boat must have worked on the boat for dozens of years, right?" 40 years. The skinny boatman laughed. "That's right. With 40 years of technology, are you still worried that the boat will capsize?" Yang Yi pushed Zhu Jie mischievously. He was so scared that he screamed. After teasing Zhu Jie, Yang Yi leaned against the side of the boat and enjoyed it with his eyes closed. This gentle rocking was actually very comfortable for people who were not afraid of water. However, this posture made him realize that there was something wrong. Yang Yi stood up and pulled out the flagpole from the ship. The boatman did not stop them. Instead, he looked forward and continued to row his oar. "Big Brother Yang, why did you pull out their flag?" Zhu Jie asked curiously. Yang Yi unfolded the flag for Zhu Jie to see. The Extreme Challenge logo was printed on the corner of the flag. "This is a hint." Zhu Jie was pleasantly surprised as he continued, "But it's written on it, what the old woman says makes sense." "What does that mean?" There was an inexplicable sentence on the flag that made people scratch their heads in confusion. "Let me think." Yang Yi rubbed his chin and pondered. Zhu Jie muttered to himself, "How come I didn't notice it just now? It's so out of place for that sentence to appear on the ship's flag. It must be a hint." Yang Yi's brain worked quickly and he smiled. However, Yang Yi did not intend to give the answer directly. He said to Zhu Jie, "What the old woman says makes sense." What was the previous sentence? "What the old man says makes sense. What the old woman says makes sense." Zhu Jie read it out. "Then why isn't the previous sentence there?" Zhu Jie smiled and said, Could it be because only the old woman is right, and the old man is wrong?" "The old man is wrong. Why is he wrong?" "Because the wife is always right." "No, because the old man did something wrong and made a mistake." Yang Yi smiled confidently and said, "The husband made a mistake." "Fu Chai, Where was the capital of the Wu Kingdom during the spring and autumn period? Zhu Jie slapped his thigh and said excitedly, "Yes. In Gusu. It's Fu Chai. We just passed by Fu Chai's sword cleansing pool." To think that the program team was actually playing such a trick. On the way back, Zhu Jie and Yang Yi sighed. "Brother Yang, you are still the best. You can even guess such a difficult riddle." After returning to Fu Chai's sword cleansing pool, Yang Yi and Zhu Jie searched for a while. Soon, they found a box in a bush. It was a specially made suitcase. After opening it, there was a card inside. However, there was a number written on it, 25. What does 25 mean? Zhu Jie was dumbfounded. "I don't know. Let's continue to look for other clues. Maybe when we put all the clues together, we will have the answer," Yang Yi said. Zhu Jie was a little anxious. He wanted to wait for the SWAT team's reinforcements. He said hesitantly, "Brother Yang, why don't we study the map first and see where we should search?" Yang Yi looked deeply at Zhu Jie and said, "No need. Let's get in the car first. As we drive out, I will study where to go. It's too dangerous to stay at the place where the clues are hidden." Zhu Jie was afraid that he would be exposed, so he could only listen obediently. However, plans could never keep up with changes. When Yang Yi and the rest were about to leave for the next key location, Narrate Temple, Jie Yuchen and Guazi's team received bad news. Guazi was eliminated. What's going on? After a while, Jie Yuchen, who had escaped from danger, called Yang Yi and told him that they had encountered the SWAT team in the Stone Lion Forest. Guazi was ambushed by Dan Hongkue and Guazi beside the car. Guazi died heroically, and Jie Yuchen escaped in the chaos. "Brother Yuchen, don't worry. How many shots did they fire?" Yang Yi asked calmly. "Did you fire?" "I didn't. I don't know." Jie Yuchen didn't remember. He only cared about escaping. "Then did you find any clues?" Yang Yi continued to ask. "We found it. It was because we found it that we were ambushed. The card inside had the number 6 written on it, and there was no other information," Jie Yuchen said. "But the box was with Xiao Gua, so it's very likely that old Dan and the rest know about it now." Jie Yuchen escaped and left the car behind. However, Yang Yi didn't go to pick him up. Instead, he asked Jie Yuchen to go to the wetland park to look for the next clue. After hanging up the phone, Zhu Jie said weakly, "Brother Yang, why do you think the SWAT team ambushed Brother Yuchen and Xiao Gua? How did Brother Yuchen escape? Could he be a spy on our side?" Yang Yi knew that Zhu Jie was trying to sow discord and divert his suspicion. However, Yang Yi wasn't sure if Jie Yuchen was reliable. After all, the program team might have more than one spy. "Don't worry, I didn't tell him about our clues," Yang Yi said. "But now, we still have to work together. Whether Brother Yuchen is a spy or not, we'll find out later. Now, I have to go back to the starting point to do the mission and save Xiao Gua. So, I'll leave the car with you. You continue to look for clues at Narrate Temple," Yang Yi said solemnly, grabbing Zhu Jie's shoulder. "Jie, can I trust you?" Zhu Jie was stunned for a moment, then quickly nodded. "Then, you have to work hard and find clues. Then, call me and tell me." Yang Yi patted Zhu Jie's shoulder and encouraged him. Zhu Jie was so touched that he was about to cry. He nodded vigorously, not knowing if he was acting or not. Yang Yi had no other choice. He could only hope that Zhu Jie would at least tell him about the clues. Taking a taxi back to the base, Yang Yi just greeted Murphy and urged Ran Min to tell him the content of the challenge game. He had to rescue Guazi as soon as possible and continue to search for clues as soon as possible. Time was running out, and at the same time, the SWAT team was getting closer and closer. "Please take a seat." Ran Min had already prepared for the filming. However, out of Yang Yi's expectations, Ran Min only asked Yang Yi to sit at an ancient-style desk in the middle of the room. "What's so mysterious about it?" Yang Yi suspiciously went over and sat down. The table was empty, there was nothing there. At this moment, She came over with a walkie-talkie. She heard that her father was back, so she stood beside her mother and watched her father record the program. "What's Papa doing?" She asked curiously.
Sure.
Murphy signaled the little girl to keep quiet and watch quietly. "Since you're in Gusu, you have to know about Gusu snacks. Gusu snacks are one of the 4 major snacks in China. Today, we'll introduce you to a few of Gusu's specialties. Please serve the dishes." Ran Min waved his hand. A woman with a graceful figure, dressed in a chong sam, walked in with a bamboo basket. It was true that Gusu City produced beauties. In his previous life, Gusu City had produced beauties like Chan Yuan and Dong Xiaowan, who could bring disaster to the country. The woman who served the dishes was also beautiful. Her charming and graceful appearance immediately attracted the attention of the men present. However, the more beautiful it was, the more Yang Yi sat up straight.
Why?
His wife and children were watching beside him. Even if he wouldn't dare to look. When he heard what Ran Min said just now, Yang Yi had already guessed the gameplay of the game. Wasn't it just remembering the order of serving the dishes? Yang Yi had also taught them the tricks that they were tired of playing in Running Man. That's it? They wanted to test their chefs? The lady served the dishes. Yang Yi's gaze was on the dishes as he listened to Ran Min's words. Gusu's specialties: pan-fried mantou, longevity peach bun, phoenix tail shou mai, jujube sesame cake, sweet potato with osmanthus sugar, warm bean candy porridge. Yang Yi laughed in his heart. He understood. Although Ran Min read it out smoothly, in reality, the order of serving the dishes was not exactly the same. There were a few that were reversed. It was a form of interference. However, Yang Yi was still confident because he had a good memory. He had already memorized it. "Do I finish all of them next?" Yang Yi asked deliberately.
No.
"Next, please put all the dishes back into the bamboo basket," Ran Min said. At this moment, the lady had already disappeared. "What's the order?" Yang Yi asked cautiously. "Do I have to keep the dishes according to the order she served them? Or do I have to keep the dishes according to the order she served them? What do I have to do to be considered a success?" However, to Yang Yi's surprise, Ran Min shook his head and said, "Neither. The reason you have to keep the dishes is that you have to vacate the table. We will give you a pen and paper. You have to draw the features of the waiter who served you the dishes in 10 minutes. Ah! Yang Yi was dumbfounded. Chapter 698. To be honest, even if he only caught a glimpse of her in the crowd, Yang Yi would still have an impression of her if he met her again a few days later. Subconsciously, he would feel a trace of danger. These were some of the basic skills that he relied on to survive in his previous life. What's more, that Gusu beauty was indeed a little stunning. Even if Yang Yi only took a few glances at her at the beginning, he still sat upright and did not dare to look sideways. However, the first few glances were enough to leave a basic impression in Yang Yi's mind. Therefore, it was not difficult for Yang Yi to draw the appearance of the waiter who served the dishes. The difficult part was to draw it in front of Murphy. "Can we change the topic?" Yang Yi asked hesitantly. Obviously, this was impossible. Ran Lien had told him that if he failed the challenge, Guazi would be locked up for an hour. After an hour, Yang Yi could accept a new challenge to save his teammates. "You guys. You're deliberately torturing me." Yang Yi pointed at Ran Lien and the group of scriptwriters, who were snickering at the side, and shook his head with a bitter smile. "These guys must know that I can draw, so they deliberately set this topic." After all, in the books that Yang Yi had published, there were many illustrations, especially Prison Break. Time passed by minute by minute. Ran Lien had, kindly, reminded Yang Yi that 3 minutes had passed. There were only 7 minutes left. "There's no other way." Yang Yi scratched his head, turned around, and bowed to Mo Fei in an exaggerated manner, the effect of the show, and said helplessly, "My dear wife, please forgive me." She was watching her father with great interest. When she heard her father say, "Please forgive me," the little girl could not help but tug at her mother's clothes and ask, "Mom, what is Papa talking about? Did he do something disobedient?" Murphy smiled. She lowered her head, patted Shishi on the shoulder, and said, "No, your Papa is joking." As he spoke, Yang-yi returned to his seat in front of the table with a serious and solemn look on his face. The smile on his face disappeared and his entire aura seemed to have changed in an instant. He held a pencil and drew on the sketch paper on the table. His strokes were smooth and confident. There was no pause at all, just like a master. The cameraman standing behind Yang-yi had a look of surprise on his face. The people around him who had been laughing and laughing were now staring as if they were looking at a miracle. Of course, most of the people who couldn't see Yang-yi's painting were curious about the reactions of others. They were curious about what had happened. Before 10 minutes had passed, Yang-yi had already finished painting. He showed his painting to the camera and Ran Min. Here, there would be a series of exclamations in the post-production. Of course, there were also mixed exclamations at the scene. It was more than just a likeness. Yang-yi's drawing was comparable to the works of the artists in the square who specialized in sketching people. The beauty just now, together with her Chong Sam, became a pencil sketch, vivid and lifelike, vivid and vivid on the paper. Was it so amazing? Ren Min was dumbfounded. She felt that the audience must have thought that she had colluded with Yang-yi. "The painting you drew," Ren Min hesitated and said, "the general image of the character has been drawn, but some features are missing, such as the mole on her left eyebrow. There are also elements that you added yourself, such as the bamboo basket in her hand, which has become an oil paper umbrella. At this time, the TV should be showing the picture and the fixed picture when the beauty Gusu came in just now. The outline of the face, the hairstyle, and the style of the clothes were exactly the same." Yang-yi's painting was amazing. Even in comparison, Yang-yi's painting was more beautiful. The classic beauty sketched with only a few strokes was more attractive than the beauty with heavy makeup. In contrast, director Ran Min's nitpicking words were somewhat difficult to accept. Yang-yi was so angry that he laughed and said discontentedly, "I was only looking at the order of the dishes being served. How could I have noticed the mole on her eyebrow? No, I've drawn so well. Why can't I pass? You can randomly pick someone to draw her. If the person can draw better than me, then I'll lose, okay?" Ran Min was deliberately teasing Yang-yi for the effect of the show. She then changed the topic and said with a smile, "Of course, in addition to these flaws, you have restored 80% of the beauty's features, so this game challenge is considered a success." Yang-yi got the key to unlock the prison door of Guazi, who had been escorted back. He held the key and complained to the camera discontentedly, "How can you torture the guests like this? Let me tell you, I'm really risking my life to draw." In order to cooperate with Yang-yi's performance, a scene of Murphy and her children mingling in the crowd of the director group was edited. They were watching Yang-yi draw with a smile. After getting the key, Yang-yi was not in a hurry to save Guazi. He walked to the side of his wife and children. She watched the whole process. She happily held her father's hand, jumped, and couldn't wait to ask, "Papa, did you win?" "Yes, I won this round, but there are still many games. Papa will continue to challenge. Only by winning in the end can I really win," Yang-yi said to his daughter with a smile. "Papa is the best. Papa will really win." The little girl raised her head and giggled. Although she couldn't fully understand what her father meant, it didn't matter. She was full of confidence in her father. "Of course." Yang-yi smiled and rubbed his daughter's little head. At this time, he finally had time to talk to Murphy. However, the whispers between husband and wife couldn't be heard by others. Yang-yi took off the fluffy microphone that was clipped to his collar and whispered into Mo Fei's crystal-clear ear, "I swear, I really didn't dare to look at it carefully just now." "I know." Murphy also whispered in Yang-yi's ear, "But you haven't drawn it for me yet." Turning around, Yang-yi saw Murphy's slightly pouted mouth. He knew that his wife was jealous. However, it wasn't too serious. Murphy's eyes were bright with a trace of a smile. She wasn't very angry. She was quite satisfied with Yang-yi's look just now. However, when Yang Yi was able to draw it, and it was so beautiful, Murphy was a little surprised and a little jealous. "I'll draw it for you when we go back. I'll draw it for you whatever you want," Yang Yi whispered in Murphy's ear again. After comforting Murphy and Shi, Yang Yi continued to record the show. He found Guazi, who was locked in the prison, and rescued Guazi, who was in tears and snot. Because all of Guazi's equipment, gun, mobile phone, car, had been taken away, the two of them formed a temporary team and drove a new car to the Cold Mountain Temple to look for clues of the key. On the way, Yang Yi asked Guazi, "How many shots did they shoot you? How many did you shoot?" Guazi's memory was not bad, but he was too timid. Brother Dan shot once, but he missed. Sister Huan shot twice, but the last shot hit me. I didn't shoot. Why didn't you shoot back? Yang Yi said resentfully, "This is great. The other person fired 3 shots to eliminate you, but you still gave the other person 2 bullets. Yang Yi calculated. Now, Dan Hongkue should have 3 bullets, and Yang Huan should be out of bullets. You should give her your magazine, which has 2 bullets, and the other 2 should be complete. I have 4 bullets now. Give me Ju Jez. We should be able to fight against a team." Yang Yi said to Guazi. Guazi said enthusiastically, "Brother Yang, I'll be your shield. After all, I'm eliminated. You can still save me." Yang Yi smiled. "That's what Ju Jie said to me just now." Speaking of Ju Jie arrived. Just then, Ju Jie called Yang Yi. "Brother, did you save Xiao Gua?" "Yes, I did." "Did you find any clues in Enrui Temple?" Yang Yi asked. "Yes, it says AACC. I don't know what it means," Ju Jie said with hesitation. "Continue to look for other clues. If you find them, we should be able to piece together a complete clue," Yang Yi said. "Go to the wetland park now and meet up with Brother Yuchen. He doesn't have a car, so it's inconvenient." "Okay, brother, where are you going?" Ju Jie asked casually. Yang Yi hesitated and said, "We're going to White Horse Stream." Hearing this, Guazi looked over in surprise. "Okay, keep in touch, brother. We'll definitely win." Ju Jie hung up the phone. "Why did you say we are going to the White Horse Stream? Didn't you say we're going to Cold Mountain Temple?" Guazi asked in confusion. Yang Yi smiled calmly and said, "Take a guess." Guazi was a genius, so he reacted quickly. He said in surprise, "Is Brother Jie a spy?" Yang Yi nodded. Wow, amazing," Guazi praised. "Brother Yang, you purposely leaked the wrong information to the special police team. In order to catch you, they'll definitely go to White Horse Stream. Then, we'll be safe when we go to Cold Mountain Temple." This was equivalent to making Ju Jie a double agent. Guazi really admired the scheming of these old foxes. Although he was smart, he wasn't as smart as these guys. Guazi said in admiration, "Brother Yang, you and Teacher Yuan have to compete again. It's all because of the oracle." However, was it really as smooth as Yang Yi's plan? Chapter 699. The SWAT team also had an old fox, Yuan Yen. After he and Geng Sha failed to find anything in Chenqiao Ancient Town, they received a call from Dan Hongkue and Yang Huan. They learned that Guazi had been eliminated and that Jie Yuchen had escaped. The other team that went to Chenqiao Ancient Town should be Yang Yi and Ju Jie. Yuan Yen analyzed. "They told us to go to Chenqiao Ancient Town. Captain, I guess that Yang Yi was the captain of the fugitive team. Now it seems that I was right. Ju Jie is the least likely to be the captain of the fugitive team. Then would he be like us and choose Ju Jie, who is the least likely to be the captain? Let Brother Yang protect him?" Geng Sha asked, puzzled. "Xiao Gua is not our spy, and Jie Yuchen did not want to contact our people. This means that he is not a spy. If Ju Jie is the captain and Yang Yi is the spy, do you think that Yang Yi, who is so powerful, could not delay Zhu Jie and let them escape so easily? Yuan Yen smiled gently. At this moment, the marvelous mathematician put on his sunglasses as if he was possessed by Detective Conan. He said, "There is only one possibility. Yang Yi is the captain, and Zhu Jie is the spy who gave the information. If I am not wrong, Zhu Jie's undercover skills are too bad, and he has been suspected by Yang Yi." The SWAT team later received the information of the second batch of clues that they had unlocked, as well as the information about Whitehorse Ravine provided by Zhu Jie. The marvelous mathematician Yuan Yen analyzed accurately. Zhu Jie's identity may have been exposed, so the information he provided is doubtful. However, we can't ignore Whitehorse Ravine, because we can't be sure if the information is wrong. On the other end of the phone, Dan Hongkue said, "In addition to Whitehorse Ravine, we have 2 more locations that we have not been to. One is the Cold Mountain Temple that you return from halfway there, and the other is the new Wetland Park. What should we do?" The second batch of unlocked locations were the Wetland Park and Chenqiao Ancient Town, which they knew in advance. In other words, apart from Enrui Temple, which had been explored by Zhu Jie, the SWAT team already knew the other 5 locations. Yuan Yen stroked his chin and said, "How about this? Most of the fugitives are acting alone. For example, Old Xie, who escaped. Geng Shar and I will go to Whitehorse Ravine to find out what is going on. You and Yong Huan will go to one place each. Be careful. If you meet a lone fugitive, you can try to eliminate him. If you meet a large group of fugitives, retreat quickly. Right now, we only have one clue that we snatched." Yang Yi and Guazi arrived at the Cold Mountain Temple. On the way, Guazi talked about the history of the Cold Mountain Temple, which surprised Yang Yi. As mentioned before, the history of this world changed after the 3 kingdoms. In other words, there was no such thing as the Tang dynasty. However, in the history of Buddhism, there was still a famous monk called Han Shanzi who lived in seclusion here. Later, people called this temple the Cold Mountain Temple. The stories of the 2 worlds complemented each other, as if the temple was covered with a layer of mythical color. Of course, Han Shanzi was lucky not to be blown away by the wings of the butterfly, but Zhang Jihe and his night mooring at Maple Bridge never appeared in this world again. However, there was no shortage of literati in this world. In this temple, there were still many famous people who left behind inscriptions. There were poetry steles that were widely known, and there were also Buddhist steles that showed calligraphy. Yang Yi was filled with emotions, but now was not the time to think about these things. He had to find the clues of the key to the vault hidden in the Cold Mountain Temple with Guazi. The whole Cold Mountain Temple is about 13,000 square meters, which is about 20 acres. "How are we going to find it?" Guazi asked. "You know this?" Yang Yi was a little surprised. "No, it is written in this brochure." Guazi was a little embarrassed as he took out a folded brochure that he had just received at the door. "Let's first find something with the Extreme Challenge logo. That should be the clue," Yang Yi said. Guazi was also very quick-witted. He clenched his fist and laughed. "I also have an idea. Brother Yang, we can see where there is a camera. There must be something there. It was like this in the previous 2 episodes." Yang Yi was surprised and patted Guazi and said, "You can do it. Before, they said that you were only 1 step away from becoming a fox. I think in a few episodes, you can arm wrestle with those 2 old foxes." After teasing, Yang Yi and Guazi went to look for clues together. Originally, it was more convenient for the 2 of them to look for clues separately, but after all, Guazi was unarmed. If he was caught, he would be a meal on someone else's plate. However, Yang Yi and Guazi thought that they would have to spend a lot of effort to find the clue. In the end, they found it not long after. In the big bell tower, a monk was already waiting for them. On the table was a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. Of course, the front of the table was also pasted with the Extreme Challenge logo. "Paper and brush again. Don't tell me you want us to draw again?" Guazi asked in surprise. Yang Yi had a headache and said, "Brush painting? I don't know how to do that. Writing calligraphy is more like it." Of course, what kind of request was this? Yang Yi still had to consult the monk who received them. He put his palms together and respectfully asked, "Master, may I ask what we need to do for you to give us the clue?" The monk smiled gently and pointed at the big bell. He said, "Benefactor, recently, the temple wants to rebuild the plaque, but the abbot hopes to extract the writings of the ancient people who wrote the Buddhist scriptures. So, please help us find the 3 words Cold Mountain Temple on the bell and copy them on paper. If you can fulfill our wish, the clue of the key will be the temple's reward." It sounded simple, but Guazi was dumbfounded. The big bell in the big bell tower was more than 8 meters tall. The main inscription on the bell was the Mahayana Dharma Lotus Sutra, which had a total of more than 70,000 words. If they climbed the spiral staircase to find it, how long would it take? Note 1. Brute force definitely wouldn't work. The program team definitely didn't set up such a big problem to trap them here. There must be a shortcut. Yang Yi rubbed his chin and walked around the bell tower in deep thought. He asked for the brochure that Guazi had given him earlier. He patted Guazi's shoulder and pointed at the Mahayana Dharma Lotus Sutra. He smiled and said, "We definitely can't find it directly. Take out your phone and find this sutra online. Then, search for the location of the 3 words. That way, we can estimate the approximate location of the words on the bell. That way it will be easy to deduce." "Brother Yang, you're also an old fox." Guazi patted his head and exclaimed in admiration, "Why didn't I think of this method?" Of course, even so, Yang Yi and Guazi still spent about 20 minutes to find the 3 words. They each took a picture of it with their phones and had Yang Yi copy it on paper. "Master, we're done. Please give us the clue." Guazi excitedly pointed at the paper with the ink still wet and asked the monk to verify it. The monk didn't make things difficult for Yang Yi and the others. He smiled and took out a suitcase specially made for the limit challenge. Guazi excitedly opened it. There was a new clue written on the paper card inside. "Hongdu Hotel. This should be the location of the key. We can't let the SWAT team know about this." Yang Yi whispered to Guazi, "We have to unify our statements. No matter who gets caught, we have to tell others that the clue we got is 2AC Hotel. That was where they were staying." Guazi quickly nodded. He watched as Yang Yi tore the clue card into pieces and threw half of it into the trash can. He put the other half in his pocket and prepared to throw it away outside. The worship on his face was indescribable. The future fox had learned another trick. "Master, thank you. We have to go." Guazi bid farewell to the monk. "Benefactor, please take care." The monk was still smiling peacefully. "Hey, wait." Yang Yi suddenly stopped Guazi. "Brother Yang, do you have any other clues?" Guazi asked in surprise. Yang Yi hesitated for a moment and turned to the monk. "Master, do you have any more paper?" "I don't know why, but when I came to Gusu City and the Cold Mountain Temple, I felt very close. In this quiet temple, I suddenly thought of a poem and wanted to write it down for you." The monk looked at Yang Yi in surprise. However, out of recognition of Yang Yi's calligraphy just now, he still smiled kindly and took out a new piece of paper. "If Mr. Yang is willing to leave behind your calligraphy, it would be the temple's honor." Under the surprised gaze of Guazi and the excited gaze of several cameramen and executive director, Yang Yi wrote a 7-word ancient poem on the paper. Night at the Maple Bridge. The moon sets, the crows cry and the frost fill the sky. Fishing and fire sleep in the river. Cold Mountain Temple outside Gusu City. The bell rings in the middle of the night. Amazing. Even people who didn't know how to appreciate ancient poetry would be amazed by the first line of the poem. What's more, there were 2 people here who knew it, Guazi and the monk. The monk was even more proficient in ancient poetry. He watched Yang Yi finish writing and read it carefully and repeatedly. The calmness of the past had disappeared. Surprise and surprise broke his cultivation, and he couldn't help but show it on his face. Good poem, good poem. However, Yang Yi, who had finished writing the poem, hesitated for a moment. He picked up the pen again and signed, Zhang Ji. Who is Zhang Ji? This time, everyone was dumbfounded. Wasn't it Yang Yi? This poem was read by someone when I was working in Gusu City. They said it was written by Zhang Ji, but later I couldn't find his name. Yang Yi explained, but this poem is really beautiful. I think the Cold Mountain Temple needs this poem, so I gave it to you on behalf of Zhang Ji. This was indeed the reason why Yang Yi wrote Night at the Maple Bridge. He felt that it was rare for the Cold Mountain Temple to appear in this world. Without this poem, the Cold Mountain Temple would pale in comparison. However, Yang Yi didn't want to write his name. Of course, it wasn't because of any psychological burden. It was just that he felt that there was no benefit in writing his name. Copying an ancient poem from thousands of years ago, copying a poem that could make him famous in the ancient literature world, was meaningless to Yang Yi. He didn't lack fame or money. On the contrary, because his attainment in ancient poetry was not high, writing his name would only bring him endless trouble. It was better to push it to Zhang Ji, who they couldn't find. Chapter 700. Leaving behind a poem that couldn't find its owner, Yang Yi didn't care about the monk anymore. He and Guazi patted their butts and left. However, outside the Cold Mountain Temple, they met Dan Hongkue, who had been waiting for them for a long time. Guazi became nervous. Could it be that it was the exact same scenario as when he was eliminated? Was he going to be ambushed by the SWAT team? Not long after, Yuan Yen and Geng Sha, who were at the White Horse Stream, received the notice that Dan Hongkue had been eliminated. Yuan Yen patted his thigh and said, I knew it. We fell for the trick of luring the tiger away from the mountain. No one had been to the White Horse Stream, but Yang Huan had already sent news that Jie Yuchen and Zhu Jie had been found at the wetland park. Yang Yi has already rescued Guazi. They didn't go to the White Horse Stream, but to the Cold Mountain Temple. Yuan Yen touched his chin and said, Zhu Jie's identity has been exposed. What should we do next? Geng Sha asked worriedly. He had already immersed himself in the game. Get Yang Huan to withdraw. Yuan Yen made up his mind. Zhu Jie is still undercover, but the fugitive team doesn't know that we already know that they know that Zhu Jie is an undercover. So, we have to let them continue to think that we don't know that they know that Zhu Jie is an undercover. We can't let them know that we already know that Zhu Jie is an undercover. This series of knowing and not knowing made Geng Sha dizzy. Even the subtitles team had to spend a lot of effort to add special subtitles for Yuan Yen. Just as Yuan Yen was about to come up with a new strategy, his phone rang. The man in black's video appeared again, and he provided a new message. Please go to the Gusu Culture Exhibition Hall immediately. Get the hint of the police's undercover identity before the fugitive team. The man in black's message was also sent to the SWAT team. Like this. Yuan Yen instructed Yang Huan over the phone, Xiao Huan, go to the exhibition hall. It'll be best if you can destroy the information before they do. If you can't, try to do this. Get rid of Yang Yi. As long as we eliminate Yang Yi, we'll have a chance of winning. It doesn't matter even if you die together with him because Geng Sha and I are at the base camp. After reviving old Dan, we can revive you. Yuan Yen wanted to send Geng Sha over mainly because he was worried that there would be an ambush in the headquarters. Yang Huan was not as indecisive as other women. She said straightforwardly, Understood. Then I'll leave my resurrection to you. After hanging up the phone, Geng Sha asked in confusion, what if Yang Huan can't kill Brother Yang, and they can get the information of the spy? It's fine. We already know Zhu Jie is the spy. I got Zhu Jie's number from Yang Huan. Send him a message and ask him to tell us what he knows, Yuan Yen said. Yang Huan had Zhu Jie's number because she had Guazi's pistol, ammunition, and mobile phone. Geng Sha nodded and said, I understand. But how can we save him later? Yuan Yan's kind face showed a cruel smile. There's no other way. Some people have to be sacrificed on the path of justice. Zhu Jie has completed his mission, so he can die. Gung Sha was stunned. He looked at Yuan Yen in horror, as if he was watching a demon king rise. Ha ha. I'm just kidding. Yuan Yan's face changed again, and he returned to his usual self. He smiled and said, Gung Sha, you're really as honest as Su Sanduo. Even if Zhu Jie is eliminated, you're still there, aren't you? As the captain, you can revive him. Gung Sha then remembered his ability and scratched his head in embarrassment. Back at Yang Yi's side, he gave some orders, and then rushed to the exhibition hall with Guazi. The message they received was to destroy the identity of the spy in the police's hands. It had to be said that Yang Yi and Guazi's superbrains were very efficient when put together. They quickly solved the puzzle and found 2 sets of identity information. They destroyed them directly. Even Yang Yi himself couldn't piece them together. All that's left is to wait for Brother Yuchen to get the information about White Horse Ravine. Guazi let out a sigh of relief and said, No, we can't wait. It's very likely that Teacher Yuan has already searched the White Horse Ravine, so we have to go to the Hongdu building first. With the 5 clues we've already obtained, we'll see if we can get the key. Yang Yi led Guazi out of the exhibition hall and walked towards the parking lot. But when they walked to their car, Yang Yi felt that something was wrong. Wait. Yang Yi pulled Guazi back. Guazi was now very experienced in fighting. He subconsciously turned his head and looked around. He pointed to the vicinity of his car and said, Brother Yang, there are photographers and staff there. There must be an ambush. Yang Yi could see more clearly than him. From the number of photographers and the shadows, he could already guess how many people there were. And someone's ponytail was exposed. Yang Yi saw a familiar figure through the car window. Xiao Gua, hide. Yang Yi smiled calmly and said, There's only Huan there. I can deal with her. Don't get hurt. I'll have to go back to the base camp to save you. Guazi quickly hid. Yang Yi took out his pistol, but after a moment of hesitation, he put it behind his back. Yang Yi felt that he did not need to waste too much ammunition on Yang Huan. Moreover, he did not need to shoot first. It would be good to play with Yang Huan and let her appear on camera more often. Yang Yi walked to Yang Huan's position and kept a safe distance. He laughed and said, Huan, come out. You can use this trick once. Brother Shan used it twice and we saw through it. You want to use it a 3rd time. Yang Huan, who was hiding behind the car, opened her eyes wide and whispered to the camera, I knew it. My brother used to be a soldier. He's too hard to deal with. Still not coming out? Yang Yi said again when he saw that there was no movement. But before he could finish, a water jet shot out. Yang Yi calmly hid behind the car next to him. The water jet missed. Easy. You won't be able to hit him, right? Yang Yi smiled as he looked at Yang Huan. Brother. You're a bully. Yang Huan was very picky in front of Yang Yi. For the first time in the 3 episodes, she acted like a spoiled child. She stomped her feet and shouted, You used to be a soldier. You're stronger than me. How can you bully me like this? Since you know that I'm not easy to deal with, why did you come? Don't you know that there are 2 of us? Yang Yi smiled. As long as you're eliminated, that's enough. You're the team leader. Mr. Yuan guessed it a long time ago. Yang Huan said, Even if I die, I can still be resurrected. But if you're eliminated, no one in your group can be resurrected. Mr. Yuan is so powerful? Yang Yi asked in surprise. How did he guess it? When did he guess it? I guessed it from the beginning. You're the team leader, except for you. Yang Huan said. She suddenly raised her gun and fired a water jet at Yang Yi. Yang Yi had long been on guard against Yang Huan's move. The moment Yang Huan raised his hand, he immediately turned and leaped, dodging Yang Huan's fatal blow. Hee, Huan, are you out of bullets? Yang Yi said with a smile, You snatched a magazine from little Gua, and you've already shot it out. You should be out of bullets now, right? Yang Huan stomped her feet angrily and said unwillingly, That's impossible. I must have hit you. Although you dodged it, it still grazed your neck. How could it be? Yang Yi turned around confidently and said, if you don't believe me, you can see that it's not stained, right? Yang Huan shouted, wait, there's some on the back of your neck. If you don't believe me, you can turn around and let the judge take a look. Every executive director was also a judge. Yang Yi thought that since Yang Huan was so insistent, he might as well let the judge take a look so that she would give up. Anyway, Yang Yi believed that he had dodged it. He had dodged it too quickly. With Yang Huan's skills, how could she have hit him? Here, here. Yang Huan stood behind Yang Yi and pointed at the back of Yang Yi's neck. But when the judge came over to take a look, Yang Yi heard a light click. Although it was not obvious in the noisy chatter, Yang Yi, who had his back to Yang Huan, felt a sense of danger. He quickly jumped forward and looked back, only to see Yang Huan shooting at him with his gun. What's going on? Why does she still have bullets? Yang Yi was shocked. He didn't have time to think and quickly dodged another shot from Yang Huan. This time, she really did not have any more. Yang Yi was still worried and went forward to grab Yang Huan's gun. How is that possible? Where did you get a second magazine? Yang Yi asked with a frown. Yang Huan did not care that her gun was stolen. She laughed as if her evil plan had worked. Haha, brother, you're eliminated. That's impossible. I dodged it. And how do you have a second magazine? Yang Yi insisted, but his tone was not as firm as before. At this time, the judge came up again. He pulled Yang Yi's clothes, hesitated, and announced, Yang Yi eliminated. Yang Yi was dumbfounded. Wait. This was not how the script was supposed to go. How did he get eliminated? According to Guazi, Yang Huan only had one magazine. If she went to the wetland park, she should have only 2 bullets. How could she still have bullets to ambush him? Chapter 701. In the base camp, a group of people stood in a row, smiling as they watched Yang Yi and Yang Huan get out of the car one after another. Yuan Yen took the lead in applauding. He, Geng Sha, and Dan Hongkue, who had been rescued, welcomed Yang Huan, who had defeated Yang Yi, as if they were heroes. Shi, who came to join in the fun, clapped her hands after seeing everyone applauding and cheering. She jumped up and down happily, as if her father had won. When Yang Yi got out of the car and closed the door, the little girl ran over happily and threw herself into her father's arms. What are you so happy about? Yang Yi picked up his daughter, pinched her little nose, and asked with a smile. Papa, did you win? Cici asked joyfully in her father's arms. Looking at her little body twisting, it was as if she couldn't wait for everyone to share her happiness. Papa didn't win. Papa lost. Shi, Papa is sorry. Papa is so sad. Yang Yi didn't lie, but pretended to be sad, and put his head under Shi's neck. Tickled by her father's hair, Shi couldn't help giggling. She had forgotten that failure should be sad. The little girl reached out and pressed her father's head, and said with a smile, Oh, Papa, don't be like this. What should I do? Papa didn't win. Sorry to disappoint you. Yang Yi pursed his lips deliberately. Well. Shi supported her cheeks with her hands, tilted her little head and thought for a while. Then she said obediently, Then we can win next time. In fact, this was what Yang Yi had told her before. Last year, the little girl and Lan Xian lost the game, and Yang Yi told her to win next time. He didn't expect that she still remembered. There won't be a next time. Dad has been eliminated, so I can't continue the competition. Yang Yi sighed, looking a little lonely. Yuan Yen and the others were looking at the father and daughter. They were very curious about what she would say to comfort her father. Just now, Shi's first response had already made them feel quite amazed. She was also a little distressed. She didn't know how to respond. He would win it back the next time, but there would be no next time. What should he do? She hugged her father's neck and kissed his face. Then she said in a clear voice, Papa, I will love you. What did that mean? What did you say? You mean, if Daddy loses, you will still love Daddy, right? Yang Yi was a little unsure. The little girl nodded and then said seriously, yes, I will always love Papa.
Oh.
The guys next to them all cried out enviously. They were all warmed by Shi's sensibility. Really, except for Yuan Yan, who also had a cotton-padded jacket, the others couldn't help but think, can you give me a dozen girls like this? Although Yang Yi was teasing his daughter at first, he was also moved later. He couldn't help kissing her smooth little face and said softly, thank you, Shi. Daddy also understands that winning or losing is not important. What's important is that I can always have you, Mommy, and brother together. As the team leader, Yang Yi was eliminated, and he was really going to be punished. However, according to the rules, he was going to be locked up in the prison, but this prison was a little lawless. Yang Yi was sitting comfortably on a folding beach chair with Tong Tong, who had just woken up, in his arms. He was playing with the little guy with a smile on his face. She even took a box of yogurt for her father. This box was for her father, and she also drank a box of yogurt for herself. Shi, why didn't you give your auntie a box of yogurt? Yang Huan looked at Yang Yi enviously and said to Shi. Originally, Geng Sha wanted to resurrect Yang Huan, but he didn't expect that the second challenge would be exactly the same as the one that Yang Yi had done. Geng Sha was too embarrassed to even look at the beautiful girl, let alone draw. Even if he could see her clearly, he didn't know how to draw. Therefore, Yang Huan could only stay in the prison for another hour, and the SWAT team decided to stay in the base camp and wait for the fugitives to show up. This was because they had gotten the clue from Zhu Jie's message that the base camp was where the key was hidden. However, the numbers were too strange, and they couldn't figure it out at all. So, they decided to wait. Don't give it to her. Cici, let me tell you, it's your little aunt. She's too cunning and eliminated your father. Yang Yi said very narrowly. Coo. She blinked her big eyes and sucked on the yogurt while looking at her father in confusion. She didn't understand the grudges between the adults. Murphy asked curiously, how did Huan eliminate you? Yang Huan quickly explained her great achievement to Murphy. Sister-in-law, let me tell you, I played a trick with my brother. I filled the empty magazine with water, and the 2 bullets that I shot at my brother were actually water. It couldn't eliminate my brother, but it was used to confuse him. Teacher Yuan thought that my brother would calculate the number of bullets I had. However, he was too careless and thought that I had used up all my bullets. Then, I changed the magazine to a real one and shot him twice. Looking at her beaming with joy as she gestured to shoot with her 2 hands with a smug look, Yang Yi really wanted to beat this girl up just like when they were young. Don't be so smug. It was all Teacher Yuan's idea. If I hadn't been careless, you wouldn't have been able to beat me. Yang Yi snorted. Just now, Yang Yi had figured out that it was Yuan Yan who had taught him to fill the empty magazine with water. Yang Huan made a face at Yang Yi. I didn't know your show could be played like this. Murphy was dumbfounded by their scheming.
Yeah.
Sister-in-law, isn't it interesting? Are you coming? You can ask Director Yen and Director Ren to invite you. Yang Huan said excitedly. No, I won't be able to beat you. Murphy shook her head. At this moment, Yuan Yan stroked his chin and walked over with Geng Sha and Dan Hongkue. Yang Yi, did you do something? Why didn't Xiao Gua and the others appear? In fact, Yuan Yan had already guessed it, but he didn't confirm it. Teacher Yuan, I didn't guess what you divined, but you didn't guess what I divined either. Yang Yi smugly smiled and gently shook little Hua's arm. Teacher Yuan, I didn't guess what you divined, but you didn't guess what I divined either. In fact, Yang Yi didn't need to say anything. When Yuan Yan saw Yang Yi's smile, he knew what was going on. He sighed and said, just as I expected. Did you control Zhu Jie, or did you eliminate him? I did. Yang Yi shrugged and smiled. With Jie Yuchen here, Zhu Jie can't run away. Moreover, his bullets have been confiscated by me. So the fake information was sent by you guys, Yuan Yen asked with a frown. To be exact, only the clues about the key were sent by Jie Yuchen. We can't let Zhu Jie leak any more information to you. Yang Yi smiled. As for the information you received earlier, it was what I wanted you to know. Yang Yi's words had a deeper meaning. The information he revealed was actually a secret signal from his spy in the police force. He couldn't let Yuan Yen know that there was a spy among them. Good, Yang Yi, you just said that you lost and made us wait here for so long in vain. Yuan Yen sighed. No wonder they didn't appear. Xiao Guo and the others must have gotten the key, right? In order to put on a show, Yang Yi even teased his daughter to make Yuan Yen and the others lower their guard. Director Ran, if my teammates get the key, it'll be considered my win, right? Yang Yi turned to ask Ran Min with a smug look on his face. You need to get the key, go to the vault, and get the gold ingot to win, Ren Min said. Where's the vault? Yang Yi was a little nervous. Why wasn't it over yet? There will be information next to the key. That soon. Anyway, the SWAT team doesn't know the specific location. Yang Yi was relieved. He crossed his legs and put his hand on his daughter's shoulder. He smiled and said, She, Daddy might still have a chance to win. Really? She didn't understand what the adult said, but she understood the last sentence her father said. The little girl asked in surprise. Yang Yi, don't be so happy. Yuan Yen waved his hand and interrupted Yang Yi's boasting to his daughter. Yuan Yen said meaningfully, Do you still remember how you lured us away from the mountain and arranged for us to go to the White Horse Ravine? We got a lead there, but we never told you. What is it? Yang Yi was a little uneasy. Don't touch the red button, Yuan Yen said unhurriedly. He kept her in suspense with the last sentence. What do you mean? Yang Yi was confused. Very soon, he knew what it meant. Suddenly, the SWAT team's phone rang. It was another video from the man in black. Red alert. The fugitives have obtained the key to the vault. Please head to the Gusu Silk Memorial Hall immediately to eliminate all fugitives and protect the gold ingot. To Yang Yi's surprise, Yuan Yen stood up and said with a smile, Yang Yi, the only clue we have that you don't is this. Be careful of the red button. Touching it will trigger an alarm and inform us of the vault's location. Yang Huan hadn't been revived, so she had to stay in the base. Before Dan Hongkue left, he comforted her. Don't worry, Xiao Huan. We'll carry out your wish and win the competition. It's fine. If you win, I win too. Yang Huan said excitedly. Mr. Yuan, Brother Dan, Brother Gung, you can do it. Frowning, Yang Yi asked Ran Min in confusion, Isn't this White Horse Ravine clue a little too ridiculous? Is it only for the SWAT team? Since they didn't have to continue recording, Ran Min explained to Yang Yi, this clue works both ways. If the SWAT team gets the key to the vault in the end, they'll press this button, and the fugitives will be informed of the location of the vault. That was to say, neither team would tell the other team about this clue, in case the key didn't end up in their hands, and the two teams were destined to fight each other. After Ran Min left, Yang Huan said to Yang Yi with a smile, Bro, we won. It's 3v2, and we can catch them by surprise. However, Yang Yi smiled meaningfully. Yang Huan looked at his big brother in fear. How did his honest big brother become as talkative as Teacher Yuan? Was there going to be a twist? At this moment, she didn't care about the adults' competition. She squeezed into her father's beach chair. Fortunately, the chair was of good quality and didn't collapse. Yang Yi hugged little Momo, who was lying in his arms and looking at him curiously with one hand, and held Cece's waist with the other to prevent her from falling. He calmly waited for the final result. Chapter 702. Cece later, if Uncle Dan Hongkue, Uncle Xiao Guo, or Uncle Jie Yuchen wins, it means that your father won in the end and we've won the entire competition. The people in the base camp were waiting for the final contestants to return. Yang Yi was also bored and was whispering to his daughter. She was a little confused. But Papa, you have already lost. Winning or losing part of the race doesn't mean winning or losing the race. The one who has the last laugh is the ultimate winner. After Yang Yi finished speaking, he saw the confusion in his daughter's eyes and knew that the little girl couldn't understand these principles. But he still had a way. Yang Yi jumped up and took a sketch pen and paper from the table next to him. He drew an oval track and a group of people running on it. With only a few strokes, Yang Yi could draw a vivid picture. He even outlined the shadows of the people running on the track and the numbers on their clothes. If this race is the same as before, and you lose the race, then you really lose. But we still have the relay race, and there will be other kids competing with you here and here. Yang Yi smiled and drew a few more pictures on the paper. Let me make an assumption. Xin Air is the first runner, Chan Shiyun is the second runner, Chi Chi is the third runner, and you are the last runner. She sat beside her father and listened carefully. Her big eyes were curiously looking at her father's drawing. But at this time, the little girl was a little confused. But there are still Lu Weisha and Nan Zhaoyu. It doesn't matter. Papa is just giving an example. You can also say that there are still the 5th and 6th runners. Anyway, when you are competing with other kids, you have to finish all the runners to win, right? Right. Yang Yi said with a smile. The little girl nodded, but he didn't know if she really understood. If in the first section, Xin Air didn't run fast enough and arrived at Chen Shiyun's place much slower than the others, would you think you lost? Yang Yi asked softly. Shi hesitated for a moment and whispered, We still have to run. Yeah. There were still 5 people behind him. We haven't finished running yet. How can you say you lost? Yang Yi laughed. Maybe Chen Shiyun ran faster, or maybe you ran faster. I can run super fast. Shi thought that her father was praising her, so she happily stuck out her chest and said, Papa, I can run faster than Wang Shijuan. That's right. When it comes to you, you'll suddenly be able to surpass the others. Then, in the end, the 6 of you will be the fastest and the first to reach the finish line. At that time, won't you guys win in the end? Yang Yi laughed. She couldn't hold back her excitement. She jumped down from the chair next to her father, pulled her father's arm and jumped up and down. She was as happy as a little sparrow. Papa, yes, we won. Children were really easy to coax. Yang Yi only gave an example, but she was talking with joy, as if it was a real race and she and her friends had won the final victory. Yang Yi waited for her excitement to fade a little before he continued. So what does this mean? If you fall behind in the beginning, don't be sad and don't give up. Keep working hard, because you may still be able to surpass your opponents and win the race. The one who laughs last is the ultimate winner, don't you think so? Cici nodded as she looked at her father, not fully understanding his words. Yang Yi smiled and touched her little head. In fact, Yang Yi didn't expect Shi to understand now, but at least she could remember, and there would be a day when she would understand. Knowing how to persist was an excellent quality. Finally, the contestants who had gone to the finals returned. Yuan Yan and Jie Yuchen, the 2 big shots, each held a suitcase containing the mission rewards. They placed the suitcases on the table together. However, they and the others all had smiles on their faces and did not reply to the question of who had won or lost. Guess, who won in the end, the fugitive team who got the key first, or the special police team who chased after them? Yen Tao, the guy who deserved to be beaten, even kept them guessing. Later, an unofficial survey was made. The most unpopular person in the show was filled in by many viewers as the director who nagged every day. It was not unreasonable. Fortunately, the members hadn't become old foxes yet. Yang Huan and Zhu Jie, who was later escorted to the cage, actively cooperated with Yen Tao's performance. We must win. Look at the marks on Xiao Guazi's body, as if he was used as a target. Yang Huan said with a smile, pointing at Guazi, who had several stains on his body. There is a mole in the special police team. Zhu Jie said, I think if the mole is not solved, the fugitive team may win. This fellow even had a smug look on his face as he spoke. If the fugitive team wins, why are you so happy? You are undercover, which means that your real identity is a special police officer. Dan Honkue smiled and said, only when the special police team wins, you win.
Ah.
Zhu Jie was still confused. You haven't guessed who the mole is, have you? Yuan Yen smiled and said. Zhu Jie shook his head in shame. This time, it was not an act. He really didn't know who it was. Don't keep us guessing. Hurry up and announce the answer. Did the special police team win, or did brother Dan Honkue make a comeback? Yang Yi said with a smile. After that, we have to go eat. We got up early in the morning to record the show. Everyone is hungry. Yang Yi felt a little suspenseful. When Yuan Yen and the others left, they didn't give Dan Honkue extra guns, although they still had a lot of bullets. In order to fool Yuan Yen and make him believe that Dan Honkue was a special police officer, Dan Honkue asked Yang Yi to send him to prison. He also hid the last bullet clip on his body. Brother Dan Honkue? Brother Dan is the mole? Zhu Jie was still slow to realize. Dan Honkue and Yuan Yen looked at each other. They pulled Geng Sha and decided to turn around at the same time. Indeed, as expected, Dan Honkue was still clean, but Yuan Yen and Geng Sha had 2 stains on their backs. Old Dan is still the best actor. Yuan Yen, who had been turned around in the end, said with a sigh. After we eliminated Little Gua and Old Xie, Old Dan said that since we were already here, why not open the vault and see what Gold Nugget looked like? In the end, when we opened the vault, he secretly picked up Little Gua's gun and shot us twice. This is called the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Dan Honkue smiled. Teacher Yuan, you didn't expect this, right? In the past, you were the oriole. Today, it's your turn to be the mantis. I have to admit that. At first, I thought that we had a good chance of winning, with our intelligence and Xiao Huan's and Geng Sha's skills. But I didn't expect that you would be on Yang Yi's side. As the saying goes, the devil is 10. As a result, Yang Yi's side had the advantage in intelligence. After all, Yang Yi had Yang Yi, Dan Honkue, and Guazi, who were all smart people. But we still won valiantly. As the captain, I wanted to claim Gold Nugget in the end, but I failed miserably in the middle. I was too careless. Thinking that, Yang Yi was upset. If he had known, he wouldn't have gone easy on Yang Huan. He wanted to earn more screen time for her, but in the end, he had been set up by her. It's okay. We'll win again next time. Yang Huan waved her arms and shouted in high spirits, using Shishi's words. The show came to an end amidst laughter and cheers. Everyone started to take off the wires of the microphones. When they handed them to the director, Ran Min said with a smile, "Don't you want to look at those gold nuggets? Those are real mission rewards." There's gold? Yang Yi was curious. They gathered around, but Yuan Yen frowned and said, "It can't be gold, right? I weighed it before, and the weight was wrong." Yang Yi picked up a gold nugget and weighed it in his hand. He also felt that it wasn't a gold nugget and couldn't even be considered metal. But it made sense. How could the crew have the money to buy 2 suitcases of gold nuggets? However, Yang Yi's nose twitched. He put the gold nugget under his nose and smelled it. Then he smiled. "If I'm not wrong, this should be chocolate." Yang Yi used his strength and broke the gold nugget and the wrapping paper on the outside in half, revealing the black and white chocolate inside. "Chocolate," Guazi said in surprise. "This is good stuff. But you can't eat it. I promised Sister Ding Xiang to supervise you. This thing is too high in calories." Yang Huan said, looking at Guazi warily. Ding Xiang didn't come to Gusu. She went back to Zhongqing for a few days while Guazi was shooting the show. She helped Guazi apply for leave from school. For Guazi, skipping classes for a month wouldn't affect his grades. However, he still needed to talk to the school about his attendance. Guazi said angrily, "No, I'm just looking." With 2 suitcases of chocolates, no one would be able to finish them. Moreover, most of the celebrities needed to control their figures, so they couldn't just eat and drink as they pleased. Therefore, after some discussion, they decided to leave one piece for Yang Yi and one piece for Yuan Yen. The rest of the chocolates were shared with the staff who had worked hard all day. Shi, look what I got for you. Yang Yi smiled and brought a gold nugget back to the girl. The shiny gold nugget was still very attractive to girls. Cici didn't care what it was, and jumped over in joy and hugged it. Is it good? Yang Yi asked with a smile as he brought a small piece of chocolate for Shi. Murphy didn't eat chocolate either, mainly because she was worried that she would get fat. Of course, she jokingly said that she was worried that Tong Tong would drink chocolate milk. She still wanted to bite off Cici's piece of chocolate. The little girl ate until the corner of her mouth was smeared with traces of black chocolate. When she heard her father's question, her eyes were smiling as she said with her mouth full, "Delicious. You can take this to kindergarten and share it with your classmates." Yang Yi shook the gold nugget in his hand. Shi now knew that it was chocolate. But I still want to eat. She hesitated. You can't eat so much. Also, if you have good things, shouldn't you share them with your friends? Yang Yi smiled and said, if you want to eat more in the future, I can buy more for you. For children, sharing had to be based on their own satisfaction. Only then would they be willing to share. Ever since she learned how to share, she rarely gave her things against her will. Yang Yi would always give priority to her needs. Therefore, even if the girl was asked to share, she was still in a good mood and didn't throw a tantrum. Therefore, after hearing her father's words, she nodded obediently. Chapter 703. After recording the show on Saturday, Yang Yi and the others spent a day in Gusu on Sunday before returning home. However, their whereabouts were photographed by passers-by and posted online. There were photos of them having breakfast in a famous restaurant and being surrounded by onlookers. There were also photos of them sitting on a boat in Qianqiao ancient town and greeting fans. After all, when they were recording the show on Saturday, many people exposed the photos of Yuan Yen and the others recording the show in Gusu on Weibo. On Sunday, tourists or locals who were still in Gusu paid special attention to the people around them. Even though Yang Yi and Mo Fei had disguised themselves, they were still recognized repeatedly. Although Yang Yi and his family suffered a lot during their trip in Gusu, Yang Yi and Murphy were still very friendly. Some netizens excitedly said that they saw Yang Yi and Murphy in Qianqiao ancient town. Shi and their little son were very beautiful and cute. Then, to thank the fans for their enthusiasm, Murphy sang a cappella on the boat, "I came across the ocean to see you." This song was requested by fans at the scene and was also one of Murphy's representative works. Netizens sighed with emotion and said, "Murphy is indeed a famous singer. She sang so well live. It's a pity that she forgot to record it." The photos and stories of these netizens were compiled and organized by some gossip broadcasters and became more interesting. Of course, Yang Yi and Murphy, the inseparable couple, were also praised. You guys really know how to pick the time to travel. On Monday, after Yang Yi sent Shi to kindergarten, he went to the studio with Murphy to record a song. Mo Xiaowan couldn't help but laugh and tease them. How was it? Did you have fun yesterday? Don't mention it. Mo Fei sighed and said, it's difficult to walk. Every time we walk, we are blocked. Except for the boat in Qianqiao ancient town where we can sit and play for a while, and in the Cold Mountain Temple, there is a kind-hearted monk who knows Yang Yi and found us a path that few people use to play. Murphy still didn't know why the monk was so friendly to Yang Yi. Next time we go out to play, let's do it secretly and pick a time when everyone is at work. Yang Yi laughed, or we can go to a place where no one knows us, like overseas. After Mo Xiaowan finished chatting with them, she started to talk about business. You guys had fun going out to play. Now, many fans are asking you guys on micro-broadcasting when Murphy will release a new song, when will she make a comeback, and Yang Yi, when will you release your new book? They can't wait. These questions had been repeatedly asked by fans recently, and some fans even called the studio. Mo Xiaowan felt that they should give a positive response instead of leaving them hanging. Now, we are going to release the song Love of a Lifetime, but Murphy is not satisfied with her version, so it will take some time. Tell the fans that it will be released in early March. Yang Yi said. Murphy nodded. She really needed some time to think about it. This song not only made Grandpa Who cry, but also made Murphy cry. She was very serious about this song. Of course, which song was she not serious about? What about your novel? Mo Xiaowan asked. Yang Yi hesitated for a while. Regarding his novel, he had not released it for a long time. After Tong Tong was born, he had been very busy. Also, he had to do The Ultimate Challenge to promote his movie. Of course, he also had some selfish reasons. After he rewrote Journey to the West, the reaction he received was relatively dull. It was not even comparable to Cece's bedtime stories. This made Yang Yi feel a little confused. He also wanted to release the new book later to see if there was a possibility of Journey to the West coming back to life. But it was true that the sales of Journey to the West were very average. Was it because in this world, Chinese Buddhism was not as popular as it was in Yang Yi's previous world? Or was it because Yang Yi destroyed the original novel after he rewrote it himself? This was Yang Yi's first big setback after he came to this world. Of course, Yang Yi was not satisfied. He still wanted to save this masterpiece from his previous world. If he destroyed a masterpiece, he would be ashamed to face Elder Wu Chenjian. He would feel uneasy. But he still had to put his new book on the schedule. If he did not release a new book, he would be letting down the loyal fans like Mu Yuqing. Yang Yi pondered for a while and said to Mo Xiaowan, the new book will be released in late March. I will ask the publishing company to speed up the release. In Springfield Kindergarten, the teachers were teaching the children mathematics. In the previous few semesters, the children could basically count numbers and learn some simple addition and subtraction problems. For example, adding and subtracting numbers within 10 digits could be solved by counting their fingers. What was interesting was that the educational philosophy of Springfield Kindergarten was not to instill the rules of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division in advance and let the children memorize them. Instead, they wanted to inspire the children's logical thinking through some interesting mathematical phenomena. For this question, let's invite student Yang Shi up to help the teacher answer it for everyone, okay? Teacher Mu looked at Shi with a smile and said, okay. When the little girl was called by the teacher, her face was full of joy and excitement. She immediately stood up from the small stool and ran to the teacher's side. Cece behaved as if she was going to receive a little red flower. The other children also looked envious. Only a few naughty children, such as Wang Shijuan, who had never been able to concentrate, looked indifferent. Why was he so happy when he was called by the teacher? Why was Nan Xiaoyu, who raised his hand high but was not called by the teacher, so unhappy when he could only pout? It could only be said that Teacher Mu's mathematics class was indeed very interesting and deeply liked by the children. Teacher Mu asked the other children to pay attention to the question. The question was, how many times does a mother have to cut a rope into 5 pieces to succeed? 5 times. Most of the children didn't use their brains to think, so they started to chatter away. For example, when Wang Shijuan heard others say 5 times, he jumped up from his chair, stretched out a palm, and shouted, 5 times. In fact, there were a few people who said 6 times, 4 times, and 3 times. No one knew what they were thinking, but under the influence of the voices of the majority, they changed their words 5 times. Yang Shi, what do you think? Teacher Mu waited for the noise of the children to stop. She smiled and bent down to ask Shi, is it 5 times? Not 5 times. She shook her head. Why not 5 times? Teacher Mu was a little surprised. She thought that she knew the answer. However, the little girl giggled. She stood beside Teacher Mu and said with a smile, Because if it was 5 times, Teacher Mu, you would have said that we got it right. But you didn't say it. Teacher Mu couldn't help but be surprised by this reason. She didn't expect Cece to have such observational skills. Moreover, what he said was absolutely right. Teacher Moo did like to deliberately mystify things when he was giving an answer. Chapter 704. Although opportunistic methods could achieve some goals, this was not what the teachers wanted to impart to the children. Mr. Moo first praised Shi for her meticulous observation, then drew a line on the small blackboard. Mr. Moo used a magnetic blackboard, and the chalk was water-soluble dust-free chalk, which was better for the children's health. After Mr. Moo finished drawing the long white line, he said to the children, "For example, this is a line that Mommy wants to cut, okay? Then, the blackboard eraser in Shi's hand is the scissors in Mommy's hand. If we erase a little bit like this, we can cut it open." Mr. Moo handed the blackboard eraser to Shi and taught her how to draw. Then, he encouraged her, "Come, Shi, try and see how many times you have to cut it into 5 sections. Slow down." Cici liked this segment the most. She could cooperate with the teacher to do experiments. Lu Weisha, Yang Luochi, and the others in the audience looked envious. The little girl happily picked up the blackboard eraser and used the corner of the eraser to erase the line that the teacher had just drawn. "How many sections are you at now?" Mr. Moo asked. 2 sections. Shi raised her head and answered quickly. This little problem could not stump the smart Shi. "Continue. Stop when you reach 5 sections," Mr. Moo encouraged. Shi understood very quickly. When she reached the 4th section, she stopped. However, the little girl was still a little hesitant. "How many sections are you at now?" Mr. Moo asked. Shi started counting. The little girl's voice was as clear as pearls falling on a jade plate. She counted clearly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. "Is it 5 sections?" Mr. Moo asked with a smile. The children below the stage were not willing to be left out. They scrambled to call out, 5 sections. Shi also nodded. However, after the little girl nodded, she hesitated and asked the question in her heart, "But, Mr. Moo, I only cut it 4 times. The little girl was puzzled and amazed. Why did he only cut it 4 times? Teacher Moo explained with a smile, "When we usually give the children fruits to eat, if we want to share a watermelon with 2 children, do we have to cut it in the middle? Then, if you want to divide it among the 4 children, do you have to cut each of the 2 halves of the watermelon once after cutting it once, for a total of 3 cuts?" Usually, Teacher Moo cut watermelons like this. Sometimes, the greedy children would be stopped by Teacher Kai and Teacher Shen. They would drool from afar as they watched Teacher Moo cut watermelons. At this moment, they all reacted quickly and shouted in response. Then it was easy to understand. Teacher Moo then used the principle of cutting a watermelon to explain the principle of cutting a rope into 5 sections. However, it was different from the other questions. The answer to this question was open, and there was more than one answer. Teacher Moo smiled and said, "Although I can cut a rope into 5 pieces after 4 tries, in order to save energy and time, I only need to cut 1 rope into 5 pieces." He only needed to cut it once? The children who reacted quickly had already cried out. The children who reacted slower still looked at the teacher in a daze. What is the teacher talking about? She belonged to the former, but she did not cry out in surprise. She was very surprised. Didn't he need to cut it 4 times? Why did the teacher say that he only needed to cut it once? At this moment, the little girl's mind was filled with a thirst for knowledge. She looked up at Teacher Moo with her big, watery eyes, unwilling to blink. It was as if she was waiting for Teacher Moo to perform a miracle. Teacher Moo did not let she return to her seat. At this moment, she really took out a long red plastic packaging rope and said with a smile, Shi, I need you to do me a favor now." "Okay." The little girl agreed readily. Teacher Moo asked Shi to hold the packaging rope and fold it twice. Then, she held both ends in her hands. "Now, I'm going to cut it from the middle." Teacher Moo asked Shi to hold the packaging rope sideways. This way, the scissors could be seen by the other children without facing Shi. However, When Shi saw the bright scissors between her two small hands, she could not help but whisper to Teacher Moo, "Teacher, I'm scared." "Don't be afraid. I'll be very careful." Teacher Moo comforted Shi softly. At this moment, it was really the moment to witness a miracle. Even the naughtiest Wang Shijuan did not care about making noise at this moment. She nervously looked at Teacher Moo's scissors. With a click, the scissors cut the packaging rope in Shi's hands. Teacher Moo was not in a hurry to speak. Instead, she first put away the scissors, which were very dangerous to children, and locked it. Then, she took out a handful of colorful magnets and asked Shi to count how many pieces of packaging rope were in her hands. In order to let the other children see the result of counting more directly, Teacher Moo also asked Shi to pass one piece of packaging rope to her after she finished counting. She used magnets to attach the packaging rope to the magnetic blackboard. 1, 2, 3. Shi counted. However, she was not the only one counting. The other children also shouted excitedly. It was as if they were also looking forward to a miracle. When she finally counted to the 5th piece, Shi's eyes were filled with surprise and joy. She spread out her empty hands and said in surprise and joy, "There's no more." "Is it the 5th piece?" Teacher Moo asked with a smile. "It's the 5th piece. It's amazing." Chen Shiyun, who was below, could not wait to shout with the other children. Shi also nodded. However, she soon discovered something. The little girl pointed at the packaging rope on the blackboard and said, "But, teacher, the rope and this one are too short." After folding and cutting from the middle, of course, the lengths were different. Some were very long, and some were very short. "It's okay. Because our problem is, Mom, how can we cut it into 5 pieces? We don't need 5 pieces that are exactly the same length. Therefore, we only need to cut it once to cut it into 5 pieces. It's still possible." Teacher Moo had a headache facing Shi's observation ability. She could only explain it in this way. Why was it cut into 5 pieces in one cut? Miss Moo did not explain. Instead, she gave the children some space to think. She even gave each child a wrapping rope and asked them to study it on their little table. When they returned home, with the help of their parents, they could study whether they could cut the wrapping rope into 5 strips using different cutting times. In the afternoon, Yang Yi brought Shi back. The little girl could not wait to tell her father the new knowledge she had learned today. "This is very good," Yang Yi said with a smile. "Tonight, Dad and you will study it together. It's not just 1 or 4 times. There are many possibilities in between. Moreover, let's look at how to fold it so that we can cut the rope into 5 pieces of rope that are about the same length as possible." Okay. The little girl nodded eagerly. However, in the evening, not only Yang Yi and Shi were studying the rope, but Lan Xin also joined in. Lan Cao Kai went to Jinling City's Wuching County to help Yang Yi buy land. He was on a business trip for a long time and was not at home. Yang Yi had to help guide Lan Xin in her studies. Of course, when the 2 little girls got together to play and learn, they became more interested. You need to cut a watermelon with 1 cut because a watermelon is relatively big. But for an apple, you can cut it into 2 halves with 1 cut. The 2 halves are put together, and then you can cut it into 4 pieces with another cut. When Yang Yi was guiding the 2 little girls to play with the folding rope, Murphy was also holding Tong Tong and watching with a smile. "Sister, hurry up and learn. Once you've learned it, you can teach me when I grow up, okay?" Murphy lifted Tong Tong up vertically so that he could lean against her and sit in her arms. Then, she shook the little guy's little hand and said in the tone of Tong Tong's character. When Shi heard it, she raised her head and looked from the rope in her hands to her little brother. He, then Mom, am I little brother's teacher?" The little girl laughed happily and asked with great interest. Chapter 705. Mu Yuqing put down his phone and smiled with satisfaction. Originally, he and many other book fans were prepared to angrily change the way they addressed Yang Yi from Yang Dada to Yang Gij. This guy, after his wife got pregnant, the speed of his book release was not as fast as before. Moreover, he even started to play variety shows. Wasn't this throwing a large group of book fans aside and ignoring them? Fortunately, Microbroadcasting, Yang-E and Murphy Studio, sent out a reply on behalf of Yang-E that his new book would be released in late March. Only then did Mu Yuqing's anger dissipate. This news was told to Mu Yuqing by an intern in the department that Mu Yuqing was in charge of. Although this kid had just graduated from university, he was unbelievably smart. He jumped up and down all day long, trying to figure out everyone's thoughts. Especially after he found out about Mu Yuqing's preferences, he ran to Mu Yuqing's office every day and tried his best to show off. Although Mu Yuqing was quite wary of such people who like to curry favor for personal gain, he had to admit that this kid did indeed understand Mu Yuqing's context. He picked some words that Mu Yuqing liked to hear, so Mu Yuqing didn't have any temper with him. "Boss, March is going to be very lively. In addition to books, Yang-E is going to release songs. The episode of The Ultimate Challenge that he participated in a few days ago should be broadcast in March. Then, there's a movie called The Fugitive. Yang-E wrote the script and is also the lead. This movie will also be released on March 1st. The intern observed his expression and saw that Mu Yuqing was in a good mood, so he continued to fawn on him. "Boss, do you want me to buy you a movie ticket?" Mu Yuqing waved his hand and said, "No need. I haven't decided when to watch it." After the kid left, Mu Yuqing picked up his phone and searched for The Ultimate Challenge and The Fugitive that the intern had mentioned. He really did not pay much attention to what was happening in the entertainment industry. However, he had heard about it because someone had discussed it on Yang-Yi's personal website. The Ultimate Challenge will be broadcast tomorrow night? The first episode? Do you want to watch it? Mu Yuqing was a little hesitant. He didn't really like watching variety shows, but he could watch movies. From the recent publicity of Microbroadcasting, it was said that Yang-Yi's daughter would also appear in the movie. Mu Yuqing was even more enthusiastic about donating a movie ticket. Although he didn't really like variety shows, it was still a variety show created by Yang-Yi after all. Mu Yuqing felt that he still had to show his support. At least in the first episode, he could join in the fun and increase Yang-Yi's popularity. Of course, apart from these two, Mu Yuqing was more interested in the drama, Prison Break. Prison Break was filmed and broadcast at the same time in America, with one episode a week. However, after it premiered in early January, within a few weeks, the show had become extremely popular in America. Especially in February, when the 7th episode was broadcast. In the previous episode, there was a prison riot, and the perverted and creepy teabag discovered Michael's prison escape plan. Lincoln was about to be murdered. Many of the mysteries were left unresolved in the 7th episode. Therefore, the episode reached 38 million viewers and set a new record for television ratings in America in the past 8 years. The explosive news after the broadcast of these foreign dramas did not spread in America. The media in America was more concerned about the phenomenal viewership ratings of Soldier's Assault. Mu Yuqing only saw the American people's love for the show through some of the foreign reports translated by some enthusiastic fans. He also saw some of the reports praising Yang-E, the author and screenwriter. This made Mu Yuqing and the other fans feel proud and depressed at the same time. Why were they depressed? Because they had no choice but to listen to others say that it was good. They couldn't see it with their own eyes. Although Prison Break was popular, America's video websites and television stations might still be on the fence. Even if they were already talking about importing the show, who knew when they would be able to see it in America after the various procedures were completed? After all, the internet in this world was not the same as in Yang-Yi's previous world. It was still monitored by copyright organizations. It was not that there was no piracy, but that it was difficult for ordinary people to access. Coupled with the strong copyright awareness of citizens, there was a lack of soil for piracy to flourish. Mu Yuqing could ask for resources from some hackers he was familiar with, but he was also unwilling to watch pirated movies. He felt that it was an insult to the author's hard work. However, it really made his heart itch unbearably. He wanted to see how Michael would face all kinds of difficulties. He wanted to see how Teabag would act as a pervert to the bone. I should ask young Dada to help and try to import Prison Break as soon as possible. Mu Yuching suddenly had an idea. He decided to post a post on Yang Yi's personal website to appeal for more support. He wanted to let Yang Yi see the voices of the fans of Prison Break. In Shanghai, Guazi did not have any night scenes to shoot today. However, the scenes he had to shoot during the day were not simple. There were many scenes that required him to fight with the supporting characters. The shirt that the little fatty wore under his suit was wet and dry. In this early spring, when it was warm and then cold, this was not a good feeling. Fortunately, when he returned to his residence, Ding Xiang, who came back early, had already prepared a hot meal for him. After the meal, the two of them read and did homework together. Although he did not have to go to class after taking leave, he still had to do the homework for the big classes. This would be counted in his regular time. At around 9 o'clock, Ding Xiang looked at her watch, closed a book, patted Guazi, and said, "Let's go for a run." Although there were still many things that Ding Xiang did not understand about being an agent, she was already considered a qualified assistant. This month in Shanghai, Ding Xiang helped Guazi arrange his life in an orderly manner. Even when Guazi started filming, it was difficult to tell the exact time. However, under Ding Xiang's request, Guazi still led a healthier life than before. For example, now, Guazi had added a night run arrangement. During the time between 9 and 10 o'clock, Guazi used to stay at his residence to play games or go out for supper with friends. However, now he needed to jog for half an hour or walk for half an hour, unless it was raining or he had to film a night scene. Of course, Guazi was lazy by nature. Now, he did not forget to slack off. "Can I rest tonight? Can I run tomorrow? I'm really tired from filming today. Look, my arm is still a little swollen. I was hit." "Your arm is a little swollen, not your leg. I'll give you a massage when we get back." Ding Xiang looked at his arm and pulled Guazi up from the sofa. She laughed and said, "Okay, don't slack off. The sooner you finish running, the sooner you can go to bed." Guazi knew that Ding Xiang would say that. He sighed and struggled to get up from the sofa. Because he was tired, his body was still a little sore. He did not lie. However, exercise had to be persevered. Guazi had gradually gotten used to this arrangement. Although he said that he did not want to run, he did not have much resistance in his heart. After changing clothes and shoes, Ding Xiang and Guazi set off. There were many people who ran at night in Shanghai, especially the route that Ding Xiang and Guazi chose. It was a famous night run route near their residence, along the Wusong River. Along the way, the view was wide and they could see many famous buildings along the river. The night view was even more spectacular. The buildings along the river and in the distance, the bright and dim lights of the Bund, were like a symphony in the city. It was beautiful. In the night run, many couples were in pairs. In the beginning, Guazi was still joking that these couples came out for a night run to torture the singles. However, after jogging for more than 10 minutes, he did not have time to talk. He could only breathe heavily and walk with heavy steps. Today was indeed a little tiring. Guazi gradually slowed down and could not keep up with Ding Xiang's pace. He could only look at Ding Xiang's healthy, lively, and soft back from behind. Of course, Ding Xiang would not leave him behind. Seeing that Guazi was left behind, she also slowed down her pace and slowly kept pace with Guazi. "How about I rest first?" Guazi said weakly. He could not rest. If he rested in this state, he would not be able to run anymore. Ding Xiang encouraged him. "Come on, don't think about resting. Keep going. Run for more than 10 minutes. Little Gua, you can do it." Listening to Ding Xiang's slightly panting encouragement, Guazi gritted his teeth and continued to persevere. He could not let Ding Xiang, who took care of him, down. Chapter 706. Guazi was already as slow as a tortoise when he reached the end of the run. He was panting like a cow, and his legs were as heavy as lead. Every step he took was extremely heavy. However, he still managed to display an astonishing amount of perseverance and persevered until the last second of the 30 minutes. It was only when Ding Xiang shouted for him to stop that his limbs went soft. He lowered his head and wanted to collapse onto the stone chair beside him. At this moment, he wanted to complain, but he didn't even have the strength to speak. There was only a stop signal in his head. You can't sit down. You have to walk slowly and recover. Ding Xiang hurriedly pulled Guazi. Sitting down immediately after running would hinder the blood flow of the lower limbs and affect blood circulation. This was very harmful to the body. However, in order to support this heavy body, Ding Xiang hugged Guazi's arm. Fortunately, she was also a girl who was born with great strength. Her small body contained a lot of energy. Guazi's weight of more than 190 pounds, he had already lost a lot of weight from the previous 200 pounds, was actually supported by Ding Xiang. With Ding Xiang's support, Guazi walked 2 steps weakly. His panting gradually found a rhythm. As he panted, he said weakly, "Sigh, I'm so tired. I can't run anymore." This guy was also the son of an official and a rich man. Although he wasn't as bad as those people, he wasn't someone who could bear hardships and endure hardships. Whenever he had an opportunity, he would complain like a child. Fortunately, Ding Xiang was patient and didn't throw him down. She even coaxed him like a child. Okay, we won't run today. Walk for a while and we'll take a taxi back. You've already performed very well today. Persevere until the end and continue to work hard. You'll definitely be able to slim down." As they walked, Guazi's brain gradually regained a bit of consciousness. However, he gradually stopped talking. His cheeks were burning and seemed to have turned red. There was a warm current surging in his heart. Of course, Ding Xiang couldn't find Guazi's strangeness in the middle of the night. Even if she saw Guazi blushing, because Guazi had just finished running, she wouldn't feel strange. Guazi was the only one who noticed it. His arm was in Ding Xiang's embrace, and he was pressing against Ding Xiang's chest. The 2 mounds were separated by layers of clothing, and through the pressure of his arm, the soft feeling was transmitted into his mind. It was the first time he had been in such close contact with a woman. Guazi couldn't help but feel a little thirsty and flushed. However, he didn't dare to say it out loud. There were also some messy thoughts in his mind that he couldn't bear to say. However, this situation did not last long. Ding Xiang discovered it herself. She thought that Guazi was still tired and did not notice it. In a panic, she chose to secretly change the position of supporting Guazi to reduce the ambiguous contact. Regarding this, Ding Xiang felt very embarrassed, as if she had done something wrong. After Ding Xiang separated from him for a while, Guazi actually felt a little lost. However, the turmoil in his heart from earlier actually helped him recover some of his energy. After walking for a while, Guazi was embarrassed to let Ding Xiang support him so hard. The 2 of them walked slowly and rested side by side. Along the way, the 2 of them had a tacit understanding and didn't speak much. They just walked side by the side of the Wusong River like the other couples on the jogging route, looking at the night scenery by the river that was like fireworks. Under this somewhat romantic scenery, Guazi didn't realize that a trace of affection had quietly grown. "Alright, before class ends, I'll ask you a fun question, okay?" Teacher Mu looked at the children from the podium with a smile.
Okay.
She and the other children responded happily and enthusiastically. "Right now, we have 7 little lambs playing hide and seek. We have already found 3 of them. How many more have we not found?" Teacher Mu asked the question as he drew 7 little lambs on the blackboard. This question was very interesting, and the children all gave their own answers at the same time. However, this time, Teacher Mu asked Nan Xiaoyu to come up and answer with the teacher. She put down her little hand regretfully. However, the little girl still looked at the teacher attentively. She longed for more knowledge and to broaden her thinking under the teacher's guidance. Nan Xiaoyu was actually very smart. Not only did the little boy know how to recite poems, but he was also taught by an old father. He had already been arranged to learn a lot of primary school knowledge, especially when there were many math problems that children didn't know how to do. He could quickly solve them. After Nan Xiaoyu stood up, he puffed out his chest and raised his head. His voice wasn't loud, but he said confidently, "Teacher, I know. There are 4 little lambs. 7 minus 3 equals 4. Nan Xiaoyu is so awesome." Lu Weisha didn't have much talent in math. She stood beside Shi and muttered enviously. Shi was slower than Nan Xiaoyu. However, she also admired Nan Xiaoyu, so she nodded at Lu Weisha. However, Teacher Mu's question wasn't just a simple math problem. It was also a brain-teaser question. Teacher Mu pointed at the blackboard and circled 3 little lambs with a piece of chalk. Then, he circled another little lamb and explained to the children. Finally, the children understood that the 7 little lambs were playing hide and seek. This meant that one of the lambs was responsible for finding them. Then, it found 3 lambs, so there were only 3 left. So that's how it is. She felt that it was extremely fun. The little girl couldn't help but twist in her chair. After class, Shi, who was chatting and playing with her little friends, suddenly remembered something. The little girl left her little friends and ran to the teacher's side. She tugged at Teacher Mu's clothes, raised her little head and shouted, "Teacher Mu, Teacher Mu." "What's wrong?" "Young Shi." Teacher Mu squatted down and asked gently, "Teacher Mu, can I borrow your blackboard?" Shi's big eyes were filled with pious expectation. "Sure." "However, teacher, can I ask why you want to borrow teacher's blackboard?" Teacher Mu asked with a smile. "I want to bring the blackboard home, but the big blackboard is too heavy. I can't carry it. My papa is very strong. I asked my papa to bring it home." The little girl was very happy to get Teacher Mu's approval. She tried her best to describe her idea to Teacher Mu. "Are you going to take it home to draw?" Teacher Mu couldn't help but ask. Not drawing. I'm drawing on paper. My papa is also drawing on paper." She shook her little head and said happily, "Mom asked me to teach my little brother, so I want the big blackboard." Finally, they got to the point. Teacher Mu smiled and said, "So you want to teach your little brother, so you want to write on the blackboard like a teacher to teach your little brother, right?" Cici nodded vigorously. Yes. Teacher Mu was about to praise Shi for being sensible, but on second thought, there seemed to be something wrong. Didn't Yang Yi's family have their second child born at the end of last year? You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.